Is Woozle fucking serious right now? Woozle comes in here, says bloody tears, gets a fucking gold star, and then says be back in a bit, don't start without me? Fucking hell. You don't belong in this stream. Get the fuck out of here, Woozle. Now, as some of you may have gathered, I have to do today's stream in a terrible goddamn Boston accent. This is because I lost a race in Xanadu to Latanya. Now, I have a lot of family from the Boston area, but I'm not from Boston. Boston. Fucking... God, kid. Trying to do a fucking Boston accent for an entire fucking reading stream of a terrible goddamn novelization. That's the wrong fucking accent, Hanabi. You walk in here as Brooklyn. We're in fucking Boston, kid. Get the fuck out. Wicked rude, Woozle. Did you get the khakis? I'm not wearing khakis. I'm wearing jeans. Got my dunks. Fucking ready to go, kid. So, in case anybody doesn't know, I do not normally sound like this. Very, very frustrated. Doing my best Boston accent. I'm just gonna sound like a fucking parody of the scout from goddamn Team Fortress 2. This is embarrassing as fuck. But we're gonna try it. I'm just trying to sound like some of my cousins. They're from the Boston area. They sound like fucking jack-offs. So I'm trying to sound like them. I'm gonna do my goddamn best. I don't know if we'll finish this book. This book is terrible. Fucking Woozle, little piece of shit, come in, drinks my clam chowder. Fucking, what an asshole. And then he leaves. Fucking comes in here, guesses the music, eats my fucking chowder, and he fucking leaves. It's unbelievable, kid. Fucking... Ugh. Should've gone down to the pack and grabbed some beers. Maybe grab a tonic. This is gonna be really hard to keep up for a whole stream. But I'll do my fucking best. Alright, if anybody doesn't know, back in early 90s or so, people wanted to get kids reading more books. Yeah, Chowder, you got a problem. Hello, Macabre Doll Witch. Hello, X-Job. Hello, Kamiyana, Hanabi. I'm doing my fucking best here. Don't make fun of me too much. Oh, the fucking cat's trying to come in the door. This is embarrassing. This is real fucking embarrassing. Also, yeah, that's what I was saying. For anybody who doesn't know, this is what we're doing tonight. Wrong fucking thing. Hold on. Hold on. Cat, will you fucking quit it? What? Yeah, Chowder. Sorry, cat scratching at my fucking door. Cat, what? You got all day. You come in when Daddy's trying to stream. No. This off. Come on. Sorry. No, X-Job. I didn't grow up in the Boston area. My dad did. He drinks, his accent comes out. I drink, I just get drunk. No Boston. No Boston, no Worcester accent. Nah, none of that. Oh, cat, what do you want? I think my cat's upset. Because he's hearing a weird voice come out of his dad and he doesn't know what to do about it. Twitch decided you can go fuck yourself. Well, you can go fuck yourself, ZSX. No, don't. Welcome in, ZSX. So, like I was saying, I lost a bet. More specifically, I lost a race with a vampire. I'm doing my best. The JFK, the Kennedy accent, not a Boston accent. The Kennedy accent's a Kennedy accent. It's a fucking rich jackass accent. I can't do a Kennedy accent. Ask not what your country can do for you. Nah, I can't Kennedy. I can do my best Boston, though, but it's gonna sound like a real unsophisticated Boston. Yeah, no, it could have. Latanya, the vampire, was merciful. Sniped in the head accent. Fucking right, kid. Yeah, I'm doing my best. But she decided, because I lost the Xanadu race, that now I have to do my next stream entirely in a Boston accent. I'm doing my best. I'm gonna fuck up. And I decided not to just make it... no, that's a downside, Hanabi. The downside is that Latanya didn't get noited. Latanya should have gotten noited, but instead I'm here in a fucking Boston accent. At least there's not going to be talking about fucking parking the car in this fucking Worlds of Power book. So, anybody doesn't know... Hold on, let me change the music. We got Relaxed and Atmospheric Castlevania Music Compilation. Whatever the fuck that means. Yeah. The Kennedy's got that rich mid-Atlantic asshole thing going on, too, on top of the Boston accent. Plus, they spent half the time in fucking Rhode Island. It ain't even a fucking island. You got stitches, Thousand Rats? Where'd you get them? Were you a snitch? Is that why you got stitches? I'm doing my best here. Yeah. I can't fucking laugh in a Boston accent. I can only laugh in my accent. What, you want? What's wrong with Rhode Island? You call a fucking milkshake you call a milkshake a fucking cabinet, kid. That's what the fuck is wrong with Rhode Island. Yeah, kick my ass to Block Island and back. It's fucking 2 minutes on the ferry, kid. There's nothing. Not a snitch. Well, that's good. All right, we got a background music. Hold on, I gotta clear my phone. Cat. A cat's right at my feet. That's very nice. Give me 1 sec here. I sure as fuck wouldn't know the CSX. I ain't never been to Nebraska. Would like to. Why not? Want to go everywhere someday. This is a terrible accent. But, for anybody that doesn't know, back in early 1990s, people wanted to get the kids reading the video games, or reading the books, instead of playing the Nintendo. Caleb Boris, welcome on in, Raiders. You have come on an unfortunate day, because I lost a bet and I now gotta do this entire fucking stream in a Boston accent, kid. I'm not from Boston. A lot of my family's from Boston, but I'm not. Yeah, I know it fucking sucks. Welcome on in, Raiders. What were you up to, Caleb? No, you were doing a 12-hour thing, yeah. You were doing excuse me. Fuck. I know my accent sucks. What were you up to? You were doing a 12-hour stream of something. I forgot what it was. You'll have to remind me. Perfect Fit. 12 hours of Canada's biggest disappointment. Ain't that just Canada? It was Warframe. Warframe. Not Warframe. Warframe. Yeah. No, Warframe. Why are you saying it weird, Hanabi? Yeah, you gotta say fucking every other word. You gotta call everybody kid. You gotta make sure everybody knows you drink from the fucking bubbler, not from a water fountain. A water fountain? No, a water fountain, kid. Fucking everybody knows. Back in the early 90s, people were worried. Kids playing too much Nintendo. They're not reading enough books. So how do you get the kids to read books? You write books about Nintendo. Yeah, you wash your clothes, you put them in the drawer. Put them in the drawer. It's that simple. Fucking use the clicker on the TV. You go to the Packy to get some beers. It's as simple as can be. I don't know why nobody doesn't understand. Yeah, the similarity to British CSX from Fox Up Bubbler, it's a fucking water fountain, kid. You drink the water out of it. The similarity to British CSX is they're both non-rhotic. Non-rhotic, which means you drop R's out of words and then you put R's where they don't belong. Well, where they do belong, but snotty people down fucking Connecticut, New York will tell you that there's R's in those words, and there's no R's in those words. That's the difference. It's non-rhotic. Very similar. Yeah. No, you get Jimmy's on your fucking ice cream, kid. You get it on your soft serve. You don't get it on your donut from Dunks. No, you get the old-fashioned donut, and you get an ice regular. Fucking ice regular. Do you know what ice regular is, chat? Fucking ice regular is you got the cream, you got the sugar, it's pale as me. That's how it is. That's a fucking ice regular. I'm a weirdo. I go to Dunks, I get the fucking iced coffee black every time. No matter what time of year, fucking iced coffee black. Dead of winter, iced coffee black. Melt your balls off summer, iced coffee black. Every fucking time. Yeah, fucking go Sox, and if you tell me otherwise, fuck off. You can say go Mets, that's okay. You say Yankees, fuck out of here. But anyway, we're not here for that. We're here for fucking reading. We're reading today. Fucking Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. In a Boston accent gondola because I fucking lost a bet. Because I fucking lost to Latanya in Faxanadu. So now I gotta sound like a fucking jerk. I'm trying. Shout out Latanya. I got it wrong. Fuck. There we go. She was here on Saturday, racing me in Faxanadu on the Nest. She fucking destroyed me. Kid, she was unbelievable. No, I'm walking here's Brooklyn. This is fucking Boston. I'm just gonna hit you with my car when I take a left turn on red. Fuck off out of here. If you're not paying attention, you deserve to get hit. Fucking don't know how to go about a rotary. Fuck out of here. Anyway. Worlds of Power is a novel based on Nintendo games. You can win a fucking Game Boy here. This is good shit. You go to fucking Scholastic, you get your Scholastic Book Fair, and you get the fucking book with Simon Belmont on it. Because fucking look at him. He's got a fucking whip. He's got this dope-ass armor. You play this game. You play this game at your cousin's house. It's fucking sick. It's fucking sick, kids. Wicked pisser. So, I'm gonna do my best. Read this fucking book. You might not read the whole thing. It's kind of long. It's really fucking bad. Maybe for some characters I do a Boston accent. For some characters I make up another accent. We'll fucking see. Yeah, this is 137 pages, Hanabi. But it's pretty big. Yeah, who the fuck is Tim? That's what I'm saying, kid. The ghostly eyeball. Tim started to climb the winding steps. Before he could get very far, there's a sudden rumbling sound from deep in the earth. The floor shook. A crack opened in the rock, and something emerged that made Tim want to run home and hide under his bed. It was an eyeball. A fucking eyeball. I'm gonna change some words, make it more exciting. We're not little kids. We can use the adult words here. Yeah, exactly. You say fucking wicked pisser because it's a big fucking deal. You got it. It's an eyeball. It's a fucking eyeball. Like other eyeballs, however, this one was gigantic. With a huge mouth filled with nasty sharp teeth, as well as 2 arms covered with claws. I see you, said the eyeball. Yeah, fucking I see you. Fuck off. Other Worlds of Power books you will enjoy. Not might enjoy, you will enjoy. Blaster Master, Metal Gear, Ninja Gaiden, Wizards and Wires. Wizards. Fucking wizards, kid. Yeah. Just want to hear something nice, Cece? Well, Cece, unfortunately tonight I have to talk in a Boston accent for the whole stream because I lost a bet. But you were very nice and your one eye is very pretty. I hope that is acceptable. I'm doing my best. Yeah, exactly. Keep you looking at. Elliot, you want me to fucking threaten you? Fucking come down there and kick your ass all the way down to fucking Maryland. I don't fucking know. Get the fuck out of here. Worlds of Power. Ugh. I got no threats tonight. It adds to the compliment. Well, thank you, Cece. This is Book 4 in the Worlds of Power series by FX9. I don't know shit about physics, Kitrin. Dracula's back. Simon thought he destroyed him. Count Dracula may have had the last laugh. Castlevania is facing disaster, and Simon's turning into a vampire. Unless Simon can defeat Dracula once for all, Castlevania's fucked, kid. No, I didn't fucking go to Harvard. What, you think I got fucking money? Yeah, Dracula. You got a problem with Dracula? Yeah, FX9, they went through 8 fucking authors with this. This is a complete story of the Nintendo action-adventure game, with loads of game-solving hints throughout. Yeah, I'm not taking off my fucking belt, 100,000 rats. Hold on, do you really want me to belt-threaten ASMR Elliot right now? Fucking hell. How many times are they gonna tell us this novel based on the best-selling game by Konami? Fucking Christ. Get out of here. I don't care who this book's dedicated to. Chapter 1. Tim. What, Shakespeare? You think I know fuck all about Shakespeare, King Pluton? Yeah, you fucking ruddish, naughty-pated ludster. Fucking churlish, glass-glazing gudgeon. Chapter 1. Tim. Looked as though Count Dracula was gonna win the battle. I will drink your spirit like cherry pop, said the Count, flapping his cape and showing his fangs. Yes, Simon Belmont. You will become one of thy children of the night. Simon shivered with fear. They both stood upon a castle tower. Beyond was darkness, except for a cold moon in the sky like a dead eye. Wind chuckled softly along the battlements. The air was full of the smell of the garlic clove necklace Simon had around his neck. "No, Count Dracula, you will not drink my spirit this day," he said, snapping his thorn whip with a crack as loud as a gunshot. Yeah. Like cherry pop. Yeah, what the fuck? Hold on. We need the whip sound. Give me 1 sec. Give me 1 sec. I'm gonna do some fucking Foley work here, kid. Give me 1 sec. Alright, you want the fucking whip crack sound here? Fucking go. Yeah, sorry about your ears. I was fucking loud as shit, kid. I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry, that was probably real fucking loud. There you go. That's my belt. So, Elliot, this is what you gotta fucking worry about, kid. Hold on. Oh, no. Got it wrong. Hold on. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, fuck off unless you want that. And if you do want that, fuck off even more. Yeah, not the fucking Johnny Test whip crack sound. No, this is real. This is... There's actually the fucking belt. Yeah, now fucking good thing I'm sitting down. I don't want my fucking pants falling. Elliot, you'll fucking die, kid. Trying to say my pizza's mid, you're fucking dead. Anyway, Simon shivered with fear. Oh, he said that shit. Oh, and he says, yeah, snapping his thorn whip with a crack as loud as a gunshot. By the way, it doesn't taste like cherry pop at all, so it's nothing you'd want anyway. Let me be the judge of that. I can't... How the fuck am I supposed to do a Dracula accent? And the vampire leapt at him. He flapped his long arms, and they became wings. His gigantic teeth gleamed as the mouth opened wide, seeking to bite. No, you don't, Count Dracula, said Simon Belmont, his long blonde hair streaming in the night wind. He held up the magical item he worked so long and hard to obtain. But I have the power of the magic crystal, and that is the one... Timothy! Simon Belmont started. Timothy Bradley, are you listening to me? Simon dropped the magic crystal, smashed to the floor, and burst into 1,000 brilliant pieces. Count Dracula laughed cruelly. Ah, a vampire has no better allies than a mother. He leapt on the boy, and then... The magical world of Castlevania dissolved around Tim Bradley like twinkling gossamer. Yeah, this is some BDSM shit. The Belmonts get freaky, you fucking know. No longer was he Simon Belmont, vampire hunter. Once more, he was in his boring bedroom. His mother stood in the doorway. Timothy, you got school in less than 10 minutes. How many times do I have to tell you? Oh, that was fucking... I'm just gonna do a normal voice. Timothy, you've got school in less than 10 minutes. How many times do I have to tell you? No Nintendo games in the morning. Why is she fucking Southern? My voice is going all over the place. This is fucking impossible. No one fucking says pop in Massachusetts. It's fucking soda, or it's a fucking tonic if you're old. Fucking, my grandmother used to always say, give me a tonic. Be like, hey, give me a tonic. She just fucking means a fucking Coke. Diet tonic. Really, she used to call it a tonic. Tim put down the joystick. Ah, gee, Mom, I almost got Dracula again. Didn't you tell me you already got the count? Judy Bradley asked, bending a frown toward the TV set. She was a pretty woman, even with her dark brown hair and curlers. But she didn't look so hot when she frowned. More than once, as I recall. Hey, why are they telling us his mom is hot? 19 times, said Tim proudly, reaching up and turning off the TV set. This would have been my 20th. Well, just use your imagination to pretend the count got staked again. Run along to school, chum. Tim shook his head as he got up and began digging through a pile of comic books for his prized pair of black leather Reebok shoes. He found one of them and began to put it on. You just don't understand, Ma. I'll know I didn't win. That's what matters. He dropped down and began to feel around under his bed for his other shoe. His hand encountered miniature model monsters and warriors, marbles, a slingshot, and finally came across the soft leather top of a tennis shoe. What the fuck calls them tennis shoe, kid? It's a fucking sneaker. Soft leather top of a sneaker. Well, mothers never do understand, I suppose, said Mrs. Bradley. That's part of our job. I do understand if this happens once more, your father's going to hear about all this, and whoops, there goes your allowance keeps your nose high in comic books. Tim slipped on the other shoe, tied it. Message received, over and I'm out of here. He grabbed his books and a half-eaten chocolate granola bar for breakfast, and ran past his mother and down the stairs, taking them two at a time. Though he was short and he wasn't exactly varsity sports material, Tim Bradley was quick. Fucking quick, kid. His friends wanted him to play pickup touch football all the time. He was just as happy to exercise his finger and thumb in front of video games. Like books, there were whole worlds where you could get lost in, zooming with fighter planes and roving through adventures with deadly ninjas. Tim's favorite game, however, was Konami's Castlevania. He'd never gotten through Bram Stoker's famous novel Dracula. It was too darn scary. Stephen King? Fucking A, kid. Tim liked fantasy plenty, but when it came to horror books, horror films, any horror comic books, Tim's knees just turned to water. This is why he liked Castlevania so much. He could deal with Dracula there. He felt like he had control. Tim Bradley was just a short 14-year-old who wore black horn-rimmed glasses just to be eccentric. Holy shit, kid. He had dark hair and a narrow face, but it was an open, friendly face when he took off the specs. Tim Bradley certainly didn't think he was good looking. He just saw himself as pretty average. Except in video games. Video games, he was fucking wicked, kid. When he ran to school where he attended the 8th grade, he took a bite of the chocolate granola bar. This was one of his weaknesses. Not granola bars, chocolate. If he could, he'd eat a Hershey's Big Block for breakfast. Ma compromised by buying him chocolate granolas with healthy stuff like raisins and nuts. Too much chocolate's bad for your complexion, Tim, she'd say. Besides, it puts on weight. Tim had a clear complexion and he was slim, so it was hard to understand what his mother was talking about. But since he lived at home and would until he grew up, boy, he couldn't wait to do that. He had to do what his parents said, more or less. Anyway, he knew that chocolate wasn't good for you. He just fucking loved it. Always had and probably always would. Especially the gooey, rich fug shit that his grandma made. He'd wash down with big glasses of cold, foamy milk. The fucking frap. Gosh, think about it, made him gobble up the rest of the breakfast bar. If he'd looked off to the right, behind a large clump of juniper bushes, he'd have seen a famous hero from another dimension materializing with a quiet pop. As it happened, the famous hero had come specifically to speak to none other than Timothy J. Bradley. However, the hero was so overcome by culture shock that he could only stare at the wonders about he, allowing Tim to be on his way to homeroom. Oh, don't worry, Sukavat, it gets worse. And we got a fucking game hint here. Fucking upside down. There's a secret path at Yuba Lake. Yeah, if this is the only fucking reason to get this book. Get fucking hints about the game. If you don't have the Nintendo power, you need this shit. You can't figure out Castlevania 2 on your fucking own. No fucking way, kid. Game wicked cryptic. Chapter 2. Simon. Hi, Tim, said the cutest school in junior high to Tim Bradley. Janet Morrison told me you could give me some good tips on where to get discount rates on video game carts. My brother's birthday's coming up. I need to buy him a nice present. Blink of chocolate brown eyes, smile so brilliant it dazzled Tim's brain from cerebrum to cerebellum. Wow, he'd always liked Carol, gents. It's fucking awful, Caleb. It's fucking terrible. Also, thank you for the raid. I couldn't remember if I said that. I'm too busy being from Boston. Oh, he'd always liked Carol, Jan, since he'd started here at Howard Junior High last year. Though they shared homeroom, Carol was nice enough to acknowledge his existence. Unlike other more socially conscious teenage females who shunned him, she'd never actually sought him out for advice yet. Tim Bradley looked around him at the rest of the homeroom class, at the hand of the clock close to the 8:30 bell. That sentence don't make no fucking sense. Didn't they have a fucking editor for this shit? Fucking on. Yeah, as if Konami was fucking writing it. Oh, you know there's one of these for Metal Gear, there's one of these for Blaster Master, there's one of these for fucking Mega Man 2. Fucking Ninja Gaiden, kid. These are fucking unbelievable. How come everyone wasn't watching the momentous occasion? How come there weren't trumpets and firecrackers and streamers flying through the air like New Year's Eve? Well, Blockbuster Discount's got a real good sale on them now, actually. Carol sure smelled nice, too. He realized he'd never been this close to her before, and it was not an unpleasant experience. Tim, don't fucking sniff your classmates, you fucking weirdo. Yeah, give us Captain N, Simon Belmont. Tim Bradley didn't normally notice girls much. There were far more important things to be thinking about in his life. However, with her brunette good looks perking just inches from him, he certainly noticed Carol. And it was an experience with every bit the excitement of a nervous moment in the middle of the game Zelda. Oh good, she said. But then a small cloud dimmed her smile. Oh dear, I haven't the faintest idea what Blockbuster Discount is. She smiled glowingly again. I don't suppose you'd be willing to take me there this afternoon, would you? Sure, Carol, I'd be more than happy to take you there. It's not far from school. I mean, it's so close we could just walk. Fucking wicked pisser, kid. She grabbed his forearm and squeezed with enthusiasm. See at the flagpole outside the main entrance at 3:15. It's a date. She gave his arm another squeeze and she was off in a flurry of skirt, fluffy blouse, swirling hair, and that wonderful flowery perfume. A date? A date with Carol Jance, 8th grade beauty? It all sounded okay to Tim Bradley. Fucking stop saying his full name every goddamn time, holy shit. Especially since it involved video games. That was something he could talk about. He'd have problems with other stuff. Still, it wasn't a date. Not like a movie at the mall or anything formal like that. Just him and Carol going to Blockbuster, looking for bargains, right? But the way his heart was beating, you'd have thought she'd asked him to junior prom, kid. The bell rang. Tim picked up his books, drifted out into the hallway through the flow of noisy teens elbowing and clomping toward first period classes. The odor of chalk dust and floor wax filled the halls. Tim was fantasizing about kicking through a hot game of Double Dragon, Carol Jance by his side, when he ran smack into Bert Alvin by the boys' room. It's like running into a fucking truck, kid. Hey, said the 9th grader, frowning down on him from about 20 stories above. Tim peered up the heights from the level of Bert Alvin's chest to his chiseled features above. Hey, Bradley. Huh? What's this about a date with my girl? Date? Girl? Yeah, you know, as in female, pretty, Carol, mine. Each of the last 4 words was accompanied by a hard poke from a forefinger. Uh-oh. Tim had forgotten. Carol had a boyfriend. A big boyfriend. Maybe she was getting ready to dump him, though. No matter. Tim was still dead meat if Donkey Kong here thought he was trespassing on his territory. Oh, gee, Bert, she just wants me to take her shopping for video games. This video jockey wants to ride off in the sunset with my girl, huh? Well, pal, let me fucking tell you. I'm perfectly capable of taking Carol to any store she wants to go to. But I tell you, I feel like putting you out of commission just for thinking about going out with my girl. What to do? Look, Bert, I was just headed into the boys' room. Can we discuss this when I'm finished? Bert glared at him. Yeah, I guess so. Don't want you to have any accidents while I'm pulverizing you. No, if you're a bully, you absolutely want the kid to piss himself while you're beating him up. That's the best. They're trying so hard, Hanabi. It was very thoughtful of you, Bert, which reminds me of a funny joke I heard the other day. Tim Bradley loved jokes. He loved puns, too. And like he always said, the badder, the better. Why does the chicken cross the bathroom? Move it, man. I'll be waiting for you right here. Tim pushed through the swinging door. He went to a sink, ran cold water, and splashed his face. Boy, oh boy, was he in trouble. What was he going to do? Word around school was that the last kid who crossed Bert Alvin was wearing concrete braces at the bottom of Bolma Pond. Kid fucking kill somebody? Tim was pretty good when it came to wrestling Hulk Hogan and Macho Man on his Nintendo. But when it came to real life, he wasn't the kind of kid to fight much. Gosh, he was really in kind of a jam, and it wasn't the grape kind neither. Excuse me, said a deep voice from behind him. Are you... Oh, wait, should I do a Kennedy voice? Should I do a fucking Kennedy voice for Simon Belmont? I don't know if I can do that. Excuse me. No, I can't. I'll try. Are you Timothy Bradley? I'm staying with the same one. I can't switch between mother... Yeah, nothing bad ever happens to Belmonts. Tim jumped. Startled, he looked up into the mirror. Standing behind him was a tall, blonde-haired man who looked like a superhero from a comic book, only with short hair and a vulnerable, perplexed look on his face. But boy, his costume sure wasn't anything from this century. He wore what looked like handmade sheep's wool... You're too slow, Caleb. Handmade sheep's wool jacket and trousers with a sackcloth shirt cinched at the waist by a wide leather belt. His black boots were leather as well. He smelled distinctly of garlic. Yes, that's me. What is this, fucking Halloween already? May I introduce myself? Tim noted a distinct accent. I am Simon Belmont. I have come to your dimension to seek your help with a dreadfully important quest. The fate of Castlevania, to say nothing of my soul, my life, and the soul and life of the woman I love, are at stake. Ah, said Tim, and I thought I had problems. I'll go with a vague European shitty accent for Belmont. Why not? I don't know if I can do it. Chapter 3, The Return of Dracula. Sort of. Right. Is Simon Belmont, the hero of Castlevania, standing here before him, square jaw jutting earnestly, broad chest heaving with purpose. And this was Simon, all right. Tim even noticed now that gripped feverishly in Simon's fist was a whip. Around his neck on a leather thong was a beautiful golden ring that shone and glittered like the heart of the sun. Righteous dude, said a long-haired guy with leather pants just coming up into the boys' room. Aren't you Metallica? Oh, fucking getting my accents crossed. Aren't you Metallica or something? No, said Simon, eyes flashing with dark earnestness. I'm from Castlevania. Great group, man. Got all your CDs. Yeah, no, this is... it's so bad, Hanabi. This at least has the excuse of being from, like, 1990. Ready Player One got no excuse. The guy cruised out of the boys' room thrashing power chords on his heavy metal air guitar. Simon looked quizzically at Tim. If you don't know, don't ask, said Tim. Yeah, no, it don't make no fucking sense at all, I'd go on to. Look, anyway, this is a joke, right? Everyone's ganged up on me because they know I'm an ace Castlevania player, and I'm being persecuted for my hobby. No, I swear upon my sacred honor, insisted Simon. Sure, okay. Suppose there really is a Castlevania, and you really are Simon Belmont. What's your girlfriend's name, huh? Answer me that. Why, Linda Estwile, of course. Entwistle, of course. You've done your research, kid. Okay, tell me then, Mr. Simon Belmont, why do you want me to help you? Why? Because you're the best Castlevania player in this dimension. Because this holy ring bestowed upon myself by none other than the beauteous Linda Entwistle guided me to you to sincerely seek your aid. Against who? Why, Dracula, of course. You see, you can't be Simon Belmont. I defeat that crummy old vampire all the time. There's no time for an explanation. You must come with me immediately. I entreat you, Timothy Bradley, please. I don't know, Suddenly, there was a loud pounding on the boys' room door. Hey, Bradley, come on out of there and get what you deserve. Say, if you're Simon Belmont, how'd you get here? Why, through an interdimensional doorway, of course, created by this magical ring. Show me. Get me out of here, and I'll believe you. Where would you like to go? Home. Come, grab my whip, Timothy Bradley. Well, it was worth a shot, thought Tim. Anything to get away from that walking dynamite truck with biceps. Very least to give this a try, and if it didn't work, he could get Muscle Brain here to use his whip on Bert. He wants a fucking grown man with a whip to assault a fucking 9th grader. Fucking... that's what's gonna happen. He reached out and grabbed the leather whip. Felt as though he grabbed a live wire. Yeah, no, we're talking about Timothy Bradley, legend. Exclusively Timothy Bradley. No other Tims here. This ain't fucking Tim Hortons, kid. This is Duncan territory. Fucking Dunk's a bust, kid. Ah, he said. Felt his hair stand on end. Energy coursed full throttle through his body. A burst of light zapped through his eyes. Everything became a pleasant calm after the silent bang. You really shouldn't play around with shocks, he told Simon. You could electrocute a guy. This guy outside would like you to... Huh? The huh was because he just realized he and Simon Belmont were no longer in the junior high boys' room. They stood in his bedroom back at home. This is where you live, is it not, Timothy Bradley? Yeah, wow. So it is. He turned newly admiring eyes toward the hero. You really are Simon Belmont. You acknowledge my identity. Thank you. Does that mean you're now willing to come back with me to my homeland to rescue it from the power of darkness? The disease called Dracula? Dracula, right. Thought the old popsicle sucker was dead. Oh, indeed, very dead. His body been cut up. It's been placed in 5 different places, kid. Sounds pretty dead to me, Simon. What's the problem, then? His curse spreads across my homeland. I should have burned the body and scattered the ashes to the 4 winds. His followers have separated his body parts and hidden them. I don't know what to do. And Linda Entwistle's been snatched away from me. She came to me in a vision and gave me this ring and... Oh, whoa, one thing at a time, kid, said Tim. Oh, which Tim is it? Oh boy, am I word, Simon. I'll come with you, but I gotta pack a few important things first. Tim began jamming stuff into an empty laundry bag. Stuff he was gonna need, like chocolate bars, Swiss Army knife, chocolate M&Ms, a sweater, Some Hershey's chocolate bars, semi-sweet milk, Mr. Good bar. Don't forget the fucking one with the almonds. The Boy Scout kit, including compass and campfire starter. Some Reese's Pieces. Hey, Simon Belmont really existed. Maybe he could lure E.T. down from the skies too. Some clean underwear. And last of all, his very best imported Godiva chocolates. Fucking kid loves his fucking chocolate. For emergencies, celebrations, just the heck of it. What's all that? Inquired Simon Belmont. Chocolate. About my favorite thing in the world. Except for maybe bad jokes, puns. Oh yeah, video games. Chocolate. We have no such thing in Castlevania. It's a good thing I'm bringing a supply then, Simon. It's candy. Oh yeah, candy's very bad for your teeth, though. You know, you're a pretty serious guy, ain't you? I think, Timothy Bradley, you'd be pretty serious too if you had only 48 hours to prevent your body from being totally possessed by the evil spirited Count Dracula himself. A voice from below interrupted them. Timothy, is that you? I hear voices up there. Oops, Tim gasped, really frightened now. That's my mom. Fucking. Our mom's a form of evil demon here on this plane, said Simon Belmont, spinning about and grabbing his whip, ready for battle. Uh-huh, worse. Can we just take off to Castlevania now before I really get in trouble? Footsteps sounded on the stairs. Timothy, when your father hears about this, it's going to be no video games for a month. I should do the trick. Footsteps were on the landing now, coming closer. Closer. Like claps of doom. He's going to whip his mom and she's going to like it. Tim Bradley grabbed the whip. I think that dealing with Dracula is going to be a vacation. I think not, said Simon Belmont. Again, the shock, the feeling of being uprooted and thrown into a pool of dazzle. The fuck is a pool of dazzle? Shapes and smells and colors swirled in on him like angry ghosts. The chill bit through his shirt, making him glad he brought along a sweater in his sack. Then darkness clutched around him like a fist. Where are we? Tim asked when they had seemed to come to a stop. Welcome, said Simon Belmont, to Castlevania. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time, because Simon's written differently. It's so hard to keep hard to keep a fucking accent reading Simon's fucking weird-ass dialogue, trying to sound like he's a fucking European from the fucking Middle Ages. A game hint? I don't need a fucking game hint. I can beat fucking Castlevania 2 any day, kid. Yeah. Chapter 4, Castlevania Caper. Castlevania, of course, was a name that Tim Bradley always figured came from Castle in Transylvania. The place that Simon Belmont called Castlevania, however, looked nothing like Tim imagined it from the names alone. Certainly you could see stone castles. Certainly the place held all the menace implied by Transylvania, the birthplace for the legend of vampires. However, otherwise it was quite a surprise. Yeah, fucking Woozle over here, fucking kid asking me not to start till he gets back. He fucking guesses the music and then he fucking leaves. You think I'm gonna pay attention to you, kid? Fuck out of here. Then someone else said you came and fucking pissed in my chowder? Fucking Christ. Go get me some fucking dunks if you were gonna leave. Gonna have the decency to come back with ice regular. Fucking A, kid. Now you're interrupting the story? Golly, Simon, things are pretty creepy in Castlevania at night, huh? Simon Belmont lifted an eyebrow. Creepy? Yeah, certainly, but it's not night right here now, Timothy. It's broad daylight. Tim Bradley took a double take. Day? But that's the moon up there, isn't it? No, Timothy, that's the sun. Since the curse of Dracula came upon this dimension, the shadow's been cast over my land, and a chill has touched its heart. I hope not. I fucking hope not, Hotco Hunter. I would feel bad for Doug Bradley. That's an insult. Immersion is ruined. I'm sorry, Cece. Oh yeah, fucking blame the fucking weasel. Tim shivered. Boy, I'll say, I mean, look at this fucking place. What a place it was. Castlevania looked like a cluster of medieval towns, but drawn by a madman in a depression, inked with about 1,000 colored shades of dark. Buildings slanted, towers leaned further than the Tower of Pisa. The thatched roof houses looked like they'd been left in the sun too long and quick frozen. You go fuck yourself. Fucking guy out here trying to act tough. The place smelled foresty, but a forest filled with mold, fungus, and mildew. A single bright aspect was the taste of gingerbread in the air. It made Tim hungry enough to take out a Hershey bar and start chewing. Candy boosted his spirits. So anyway, here we are, he said between bites. Won't have to worry about Bert or my mom in Castlevania. You want to tell me the rest of the story? Simon Belmont nodded gravely. When I killed Dracula after all that struggle, boy, you bet it's a struggle. It took me a whole 2 months to win my first game. Thought my thumbs were gonna fucking fall off. Simon frowned and put his hands on his hips. Please, you're going to have to keep a little quiet so that I may relate my story. Oh yeah, I'm sorry about that. After all that struggle, after I defeated Dracula, I did not realize I should have burned his body and scattered the fucking ashes. Now, I thought I won the day, and so I left him with the stake in his heart. I knew something was wrong when my beautiful Linda, whom Dracula had captured, did not come back to me. Simon put a hand over his heart, lowered his head, and sighed. A pang nudged Tim. Gee, he felt really sorry for this guy. After all that effort, he doesn't get the love of his life back. It was at this moment that Tim Bradley determined that yes, he'd do his very best to help Simon Belmont. He was a good man. That's okay, Simon, said Tim. We'll get it back. Together. Even though this is the weirdest looking place I've ever seen, I'm not really sure if this is a dream. Well, make no mistake, this is no dream. Dracula is very real, and his power is far more than I thought it was. When I left his body in his coffin, his helpers came. They cut Dracula in 5 parts. His evil soul swept through the dimension, a temporary stay from its banishment. Yeah, it's the fucking Boston stream, Jones. But you see, Timothy Bradley, the soul of Dracula has 48 hours to find a body to possess so that it can remain here. Like bad movie music, a wind swept through some of the nearby trees, snatching off the last of the leaves and rattling the limbs. A shiver of dread went up Tim Bradley's spine. Oh, this is no Halloween prank. Felt like the real thing. You mean, like me? Simon Belmont turned a haunted look toward Tim. No, me, kid. You? Why'd he want you? He must possess the last person he infected with his blood, said the hero. He unrolled his sleeve. On his arm were 3 small parallel grooves filled with scabbed blood. The scars of Dracula, Timothy Bradley. I'm the person he must possess. And this is the true problem. This is why I need an aide to help me through Castlevania. This is why I need your help so desperately. You mean if he takes you over, you'll become a vampire? Yeah. And then the monster shall again rule my beloved home of Castlevania. True dread jolted Tim Bradley. He felt the intense need for a Hershey's Big Block come over him. Where was his pack? Oh yeah, he bent over and rummaged through its contents with his hand. Sounds pretty serious, Simon. You're saying you got 2 days to stop Dracula. Suppose that means you have to find those body parts, right? You put them together, you fight him again, you beat him again, this time you fucking destroy him forever, kid. Found the chocolate bar and gripped it. Hey, you know, this would make a fantastic video game. He turned back around, starting to tear the wrapper off the candy bar. In fact, when I get back, I'm going to write a game company immediately and suggest that... The yikes was in good cause. For Simon Belmont was no longer totally Simon Belmont. Greetings, mortal. I can't do Dracula in the Boston accent. Greetings, mortal, said the voice of Count Dracula. Come to Castlevania for an early and unpleasant death, I take it. Tim Bradley dropped his candy bar. Chapter 5. Dr. Simon and Mr. Dracula. Yeah, you get it? It's fucking like Jekyll and Hyde. Simon and Dracula. Fucking. This book's fucking terrible. Simon Belmont was undergoing a transformation like nothing Tim Bradley had ever seen before. No, I can't do a Boston Dracula, Jones. I can fucking try, but it's not gonna go good. My brain gets all confused when I try to do more than one accent at a time. His back was bending over like a hunchback's, and his fingers grew hairy. His nose lengthened and tapered to a point, his face thinning, his mouth drawn into a cruel sneer. The hair became limp and greasy. It was like Dr. Jekyll turning into Mr. Hyde, only much, much worse. And the eyes. Eyes became narrow slits behind which pupils glowed like live coals in a furnace. They burned through Tim like laser beams edged with razor blades. Tim Bradley could have screamed. He would have let out a long, loud one. Unfortunately, he was so paralyzed with fear he could barely move, let alone make a sound. Dracula was taking over Simon Belmont's body. I'll try a Boston Dracula. You're a puny little... No, I can't. I'm just gonna do a Dracula voice. You are a puny little nothing, aren't you? Why ever did Simon Belmont choose you asked Dracula's voice, coming from Simon's transformed body. I can see that my success in taking over his body is virtually assured. Oh yeah? Tim blurted, breaking out of his freeze. I happen to already beaten you 19 times. Is that right, mortal? I certainly remember none of those times. You're a silly thing, aren't you? I shall enjoy hearing you squeal and feeling you squirm when I sink my lovely fangs into your soul. Is that the tooth? Tim shot back. Ugh, cried Dracula's voice. Simon's body jerked back as though physically struck. A pun! I abhor puns. If there's anything I can't stand more, it's stupid, silly jokes. Really? Well then, Drac, maybe you'd know why a duck flies looking down? No! Stop, or I shall tear you to pieces. Because he doesn't want to quack up. The vampire's face now seemed to be merely superimposed over that of Simon Belmont's, and the double-imaged face was freaking out. Dumb joke. Stupid joke. Nah, Drac, said Tim Bradley, sensing victory within his grasp. It's a foul joke, kid. The vampire's face contorted with outrage. His eyes bugged so wide they appeared as though they were going to pop out. Bah, he said. I shall revenge myself upon you for that, mortal. Take heed. Your blood and your soul will belong to me. Hey, don't count Dracula, you kid. Fucking nay. Don't count Dracula, you chickens, before they're hatched, Wimpire. Wimpire's a fucking good one. Dracula didn't even get a scream out for that one. The fanged mouth just opened incredibly wide and then pop. The flattened picture of the Count imploded, leaving Simon back the way he'd been originally, only looking more pained if that was possible. That was the very worst yet, he said. The accursed fucking... I don't know what kind of fucking voice to do for Simon, but I'm gonna do the same fucking voice for Simon. The accursed vampire almost had me then. If not for you and your jokes, my new friend, I surely would have fallen under his sway. I'll do a little Kennedy, if I can. Hey, give yourself some credit. You put some willpower into the battle, I'm sure, said Tim. He was feeling braver already. That old fool wasn't such a danger after all. This would be just like an easy video game. You realize that now Count Dracula will be... I fucking can't do a fucking Kennedy. You realize that now Count Dracula will be after your body and soul as well. Tim shrugged nonchalantly. I can handle it. If he defeats me and gains the use of my body and remains in this dimension, he will take great pleasure in flaying every inch of your skin off. Tim blinked. And after he pours salt on your raw nerves, he will dip you into a vat of acid. Tim gulped. And then, Timothy Bradley, he will start torturing you. Simon, I think I'm going to need more chocolate for this little expedition. I just remembered, I'm allergic to garlic. Maybe you better get my older brother Fred. He's really much better than I am at Castlevania. However, Simon Belmont had already spun on his heel and had started down the road. Come, Timothy Bradley. We shall go to... Come, Timothy Bradley. Let's go to the local bar. We'll get our supplies and plan our strategy. Tim Bradley stood still for a moment, trying to figure a way out of this business. But then the darkness closed in, cold and ominous. He grabbed his bag of necessities and tripped on down the cobblestones after the blonde hero. Chapter 6. The 7 Deadly Sins. Fucking, class, I gotta say, this shit is not fucking easy. It takes a lot of concentration to keep up a fucking bad accent this whole fucking time. Then this book is fucking terrible. I'm just gonna be swearing a lot to try to keep in that headspace. Tim Bradley took a drink of the hot cocoa he'd mixed over the hearth fire of the Heart and Soul Tavern. So what now, Simon? He said, leaning back into the chair, feeling much better here in the soft shadows of this comfortable inn. The chubby red-nosed innkeeper, a fellow by the name of Peterson, had treated them to a fill-in meal of cheese, bread, and fruit. He'd also packed a nice backpack for Simon as well. Doubtless they would get hungry during their quest, and even Tim had to admit he couldn't live on chocolate alone. Now we rest, said Simon, munching on an apple. We rest and we wait until nightfall. Tim sputtered on his milk. What? Wait until nightfall? I mean, ain't it dark enough already? Can we start, like, tomorrow morning when that joke of a sun comes back out? Simon shook his head. First, we need rest, but not that much rest. Second, we need energy. Have a chocolate bar. No, not that sort of energy, Timothy. Magical energy. For you see, at night, wraith ghouls emerge from their damp holes. He held up his thorn whip. Linda has told me that if I dispatch them with this whip into the dimension from which they came, they will leave behind the energy that animates them, and I and you will be able to absorb that energy. Ghouls, huh? Tim shuddered. Then, what's next after that? You simply follow me. I have been given some clues as to the locations of the body pieces of Dracula. However, we must obtain other magical items to aid us on our quest, along with assistance from the townspeople, priests, and others. However, we must be very careful, for the power of Dracula is such that these people may tell us lies. Somehow we must verify their truth or untruth. Perhaps we might find a magical tool that allows us to do so. What, we bump around in the dark asking directions? Tim asked, a distinct... Fucking, it's so easy to fall out of this. Tim asked, a distinct uneasiness inside him. If you like, we may leave now and take what we can of the light. However, in order to get the dimensional energy of the world, we should have to hunt for monsters in the outlying woods beyond. Never mind, said Tim. I guess I'll take my chances tonight. Tried to cheer up. Hey, should we bring diamonds? Diamonds? Why diamonds? Because, don't they say, diamonds are a ghoul's best friend? Oh, that was miserable. Simon Belmont looked at Tim as though he were from another planet, which he was, of course. Well, another dimension anyway. Tim could see that Simon was a deadly serious type who didn't get jokes. It didn't matter. The dude was big and the dude was brave, and he meant well. Gee, said Tim, laughing. At least Dracula gets my jokes. He doesn't like them much, but he gets them. Simon shrugged and proceeded with his instructions. What you witnessed back on the street was my worst attack yet. Dracula is attempting to control me. However, usually he works in the traditional ways, like temptation. You see, we all have dark sides, Timothy Bradley. We are all mixtures of good and evil. Yes, even I, Simon Belmont, hero of Castlevania. It is through this avenue, this dark side, that the spirit of Dracula generally sneaks up on me. That is one of the reasons I need you, to help me fight him off. Not only in the manner you used before, but by pointing out to me the telltale signs by my behavior. You mean like if you start kicking old ladies? Simon's eyebrows knitted with bafflement, but then understanding dawned on him. He did not, however, smile at the exaggeration. Ah, I see. No, I do not normally kick old ladies. This would be a sin. In fact, if I begin to show signs of committing any of the 7 deadly sins, warn me. The 7 deadly sins? Let me see, what are those? Ah, yeah, gluttony. That's one. Tim took a big mouthful of his cheese sandwich and then dug into his sack for a chocolate bar. Lethargy. Tim yawned. Yeah, I could use a little sleep. Beware, Timothy Bradley. Count Dracula could well be tempting you. Tim blinked, but then waved off the notion. Why, 'cause I'm hungry and a little tired? Simon nodded. Perhaps you are right. In any event, the other deadly sins are deceit, jealousy, lust, anger, and blasphemy. If you see any of them creeping into my actions or words, you should... What, hit you over the head with a fucking sledgehammer? No, that would hurt me too much. Hey, it's a joke. Don't you Castlevanians have jokes? Of course we do, Timothy. We are not zombies. Simon cleared his throat. How many vampires does it take to light a lantern? Hey, wow, great, a joke. Kind of like a light bulb joke. I give up. What's the answer? Simon Belmont scratched his head. I seem to have forgotten it. No matter, not important. What is important, vitally important, is our mission. Wow, thought Tim. Vampires, ghouls, monsters, the 7 deadly sins, a quest, danger lurking in every mildewed corner. This was not going to be your average Tim Bradley night of chocolate popcorn, video games, chocolate comic books, and more chocolate. This was going to be one righteous adventure. Holy shit, this book is so bad. I do not know if I will be able to get through this. This is painful. Chapter 7. Ghouls just want to have fun. Oh my god. Holy shit. Ugh, this is bad. Simon Belmont snapped his whip. Hold on. Whip sound effect. There we go. The end of the whip hit the ghoul right in the misty stuff that composed its chest. The thing was hurled back a footstep, but then it righted itself and kept on coming. Simon pulled the whip back, readying to crack again. I'm out of malort, John. I'm fucking out of malort. I don't have any. Also, it's a Monday night. I'm not getting tilted on a Monday night. Tim Bradley just stood in his tracks, frightened out of his mind. This wasn't just any two-dimensional programmed TV image dot array that could be handled with a joystick. It was a living, breathing, so rotten it smelled worse than Tim's socks monster. Oh, scratch that. This was a dead, living, breathing monster. The thing was about 7 feet tall. Its gray skin hung down in tatters, revealing bones and worms beneath. Its popping orbs looked like the eyes of a long-dead fish. When you looked closer at the thing, it got worse. When you looked closer, you saw it was only half solid. It seemed to be composed half of flesh and half of gray smog lit from within by an unearthly glow. Simon's whip unfurled, catching the thing again, this time squarely in its skull face. This time, the whip had instant effect. Explosion like a fucking M80 going off in a garbage can sounded out. Shivers of energy-infested ectoplasm radiated around the whip's end. Yeah, Neozoth, it ain't that bad. The whole creature shook. Then, with a bright shimmer, it seemed to wrench away from existence, as though some kind of hook had come out of nowhere and dragged it into a black hole, leaving only its outline behind. The outline turned to a dazzle that glittered over Simon Belmont like fairy dust. Simon shivered, and his eyes got wide for a moment. Then he recoiled his whip around his hand and nodded toward Tim. Ah, yeah, energy. Already I feel recharged with vigor. I'm ready for another. Well, good for you, Simon. Me, I'm ready to go back to that safe, warm tavern. Tim wasn't serious. He knew he had a job ahead of him he promised to do. He wasn't the sort to weasel out of his commitments. But all in all, he would rather be back in the tavern sipping hot chocolate than fighting ghouls in the middle of a dark Castlevania night. They finished their dinner back at the Heart and Soul. The innkeeper had just wanted them to eat more, but Simon insisted that too much to eat and drink would make him tired and heavy for tonight's action. Just a little cat nap would do, he insisted. That was just what they'd had, too. A cat nap. Right there on the benches of the tavern, right beside 2 tavern cats. Fortunately, Tim's allergies weren't acting up, so he actually managed to go to sleep despite all the excitement of the day, and all the excitement yet to come, and all the caffeine and all the chocolate bars he'd devoured. Must have been all that warm milk he'd drunk. When he'd woken up, it was dark outside, so he figured it was time to go. However, the sun was still up, even though it was low in the sky. They spent the remaining minutes warming up their muscles with exercises. The Simon... Jesus Christ, did this book have an editor? The Simon had prepared himself by sitting very still with legs folded under him. Tim had prepared himself by eating a bag of M&Ms. Simon's voice brought him back to the present. There's no time for loafing in warm taverns, Timothy Bradley. Look, here come 2 more ghouls. You take one while I deal with the other. This is an unarmed child, Simon. Completely Sukavat. Sure enough. Oh, thank you. Or the stretch. Oh, thank you. Sure enough, coming out of a narrow alley like 2 gravestones with arms, legs, and bad attitudes shambled 2 ghouls. They kissed harshly, opening mouths filled with sharp teeth. Long claws reached out to rend and tear at the victims. All in all, it was not a pleasant sight. Tim Bradley lifted the sword that Simon had given him just after they'd arrived at the inn. He would have preferred a gun. However, Simon Belmont had informed him not only there were no guns in Castlevania, but even if they were imported from another dimension, they wouldn't work here. Gunpowder didn't explode in Castlevania. Clearly not, Jones. Things work on magical principles here, Timothy, Simon had explained, and also on the moral laws of good and evil. This is why I'm very good, and Dracula's very bad. Anyway, now Tim Bradley didn't have time to worry about the niceties of ethics and moral philosophy. He had a snarling creature to deal with. The ghoul bore down on him with surprising speed for something that looked like it was going to fall apart any moment. Tim swung the sword over his head toward the creature, but somehow fucking missed. The metal sword crashed down on the cobbles noisily. Sang the song of Simon's whip from behind him as the hero dealt with his ghoul. The ghoul's razor-sharp fingernails reached out and ripped at Tim's jacket. The whole arm was torn. Oh, my mom's gonna kill me. The ghoul just snarled and pushed its outstretched hand toward Tim Bradley's throat. Yeah, it's fucking 1990, Jones. They didn't know shit from shit. You rat. I hope you have a mom, because that's who I'm sending you back to. With all his might, Tim lifted the sword and swung it toward the spot where Simon's whip had been so affected on the last ghoul. The thick, pitted blade sliced into the mist skin, and immediately sparks flew like a blowout in a spiral galaxy. As he watched with astonishment, the ghoul slowly faded away. Before it was completely invisible, it was yanked from its existence on this plane, leaving behind only its outline. The outline hovered, shimmering for an instant, and then like a tiny piece cut from a whirlwind of light, it flew up the metal of Tim's sword. It felt as though he'd stuck both hands in an electrical outlet. Energy coursed through him, but without a buzz, and it felt like his hair was standing on end. He also felt as though he'd been jolted awake. "Huh, fucking A," he said, blinking as he turned to Simon. "That really packs a wallop." He felt as though he'd just run a mile and then drunk a quart of Gatorade. Refreshed, vital, alert. I feel like somebody charging batteries. "Yeah, you see? Now we have sufficient energy to deal with the next part of our mission." "Which is, pray tell?" asked Tim, fairly bouncing off the balls of his feet. "According to Linda Entwistle, first we must locate the rib of Dracula." "That must be his funny bone. He sure seems to have lost it." Gosh, he felt alive and buoyant. Felt like he could conquer the world and play 2 hours of touch football in the evening. "Yes, perhaps. She said we would receive a clue as to its whereabouts from the central signpost in the middle of Castlevania." Simon's face twitched. "First, though, I seem to be hungry again. Perhaps we should go back to the Heart and Soul Tavern. There we can eat a decent meal. Eggs and flapjacks, I should think. Oh yes, and cake with whipped cream. And apples, lots of apples. And you can eat your chocolate and we can wash it all down with yards of foamy ginger ale. And then we can eat sausages and jams and perhaps think about dessert." Yeah, sounded good to Tim. He was always hungry. Could do with a couple of Cadbury bars, if only to celebrate his victory over the ghoul. But then he caught himself up short. This was the sort of warning sign that Simon told him about. Wasn't gluttony one of the 7 deadlies? His stomach rumbled. So some pancakes would be good. Nah, he told himself. This is why he was here. To help Simon resist temptations, not to fall to them himself. He had a responsibility to fulfill, and he meant to do it. He kicked Simon Belmont in the fucking ass. Not real hard, but firmly enough to wrest his attention away from treats and sweets. "Ouch," said Simon. He lifted his whip up, turning a look of anger and menace on Tim. "Why do you strike me, mortal? You see, you're even starting to sound like Dracula." Simon's mouth dropped open. "Yes, you're right. And so you kicked me upon my nether parts." Simon patted Tim upon his shoulder. "Excellent. Already Linda has guided me truly in selecting such a fine fellow as you." Tim felt a stirring of feeling. He really liked this guy. When Simon Belmont had a good thought about someone, he shared it. He was thoughtful, sincere, honest. So what if he was a bit unhip? He had his own brand of cool. "Anytime, Simon." Tim looked down the intersecting streets, deserted now, all wrapped in night and eerie mist. "Well, we'd better be going to that signpost now, right? Question is which way?" "Right, my true friend. The way to the signpost is no problem. Follow me." And Tim, trusting Simon to show him the correct way, followed. Yeah, Woozle, the fucking writing in this is unbelievable. It's fucking unbelievable. Chapter 8, the signpost. There's fucking like 20 chapters in here. Kawaii Chipikaneko. Threaten Woozle? Woozle, I'm gonna fucking shave you, tar you, feather you, and then send you out to get fucking hunted for Thanksgiving turkey. "Fucking A," said Tim Bradley, gazing upon the thing with a mixture of awe and bafflement. "This is the weirdest signpost I ever fucking seen." "As I said, Timothy Bradley, things are not the same here in Castlevania as they are in your dimension." "Not for another month, Hanabi." The sign was normal around the edges. Its stand was wood, solid oak from the looks. The frame was wood as well. However, it was the image inside the frame that was weird. "Clouds," said Tim. "Looks like just a muddle of clouds. Feel like I'm looking in the Twilight Zone." Looked over his shoulder. "Is Rod Serling hiding anywhere around here, by the way?" Twilight Zone? Cultural reference. What good is it going to do in getting our directions to Dracula's chest bone? "Just a moment, my friend. Observe." From around his neck, Simon took the leather thong to which was tied the magical ring that had brought him to Earth and to Tim. He picked up the ring between his fingers and it sparkled with his touch. Tim found himself holding his breath with excitement. Literally the name of the fucking game here, Hanabi. He wants to play that game Zelda and have a hot game of Double Dragon with Carol Jance. Tim found himself holding his breath with excitement. There was something righteous and glorious about that ring now as Simon held it to the sign. The golden glitter touched the wood. Tim Bradley gasped with wonder. The clouds exploded with light. Tim had to hold up his hand to shield his eyes. There was violet light, red light, light of rainbow dazzle, and then the light faded into a soft, simple radiance surrounding a face. It was a woman's face. It was the most beautiful woman Tim Bradley had ever seen. She had eyes the color of the sky at its most blue and hair the color of honey. Her skin was soft and pure and clean. She was smiling, but it was a smile of sadness, of melancholy. "Linda," said Simon Belmont. "My wonderful and beautiful Linda Entwistle. You are correct. At night the signs can become portals into the dimension where you are imprisoned." Linda smiled understandably at her beloved. "I should think that's fair." Fucking, I can't do both a Boston accent and try to pitch my voice up. I just can't do it. I would need to practice. This is why voice actors are a thing, and not just people reading lines. Linda Entwistle smiled understandably at her beloved. "I should think that's fairly obvious, darling. But I see you successfully brought the hero from Earth here. My goodness, he's a handsome young man." Tim blushed. "Hi," was all he could manage. "No, you didn't miss a thing. We got isekai'd into the world of Castlevania. Literally, we got isekai'd." "He's already saved me from Dracula twice," said Simon. "But time grows short, Linda. We must seek out the 5 vital parts of Dracula you have described. The closest, as you say, is Dracula's rib. But where is this rib?" Linda Entwistle's image shook and quivered as though the sign were a magical television screen and something were interfering with the transmission. "There are limits to the power of the ring you hold, my darling," she said. "It, too, is affected by the curse of Dracula upon the land of Castlevania. When I attempt to tell you the direct truth of the locations of these parts to Dracula, the message is garbled. Therefore, I must tell you indirectly through puzzles and riddles." I guess this is how they try to fucking explain the bad translation in Castlevania 2. Puzzles and riddles? It's the fucking worst fate imaginable, Jones. "I am not too good with puzzles and riddles, Linda, you know that." "Yes, my dear, I remember how baffled you were when we played such games as children. However, this is one of the reasons I had you seek the help of Tim Bradley here. Tim, you are good with such brain teasers, are you not?" "Well, that's what my teachers say, and I do like to do crosswords and stuff sometimes, but I'm not really the best. I don't know why you chose me." She smiled. "Perhaps for your modesty. Now, there are people..." A kind of static frizzled through the screen, shot with veins of blood red. Seriously, Hanabi. "They'll also be told in puzzles and riddles." "Stop," said Simon. "We didn't get the last part. There was an interruption." Linda cleared her throat. "I said there are people at Castlevania and the surrounding environs who have learned of the whereabouts of these pieces of Dracula, and they know the how-abouts to get to them." "Precisely. You're a sharp fellow, young Tim." She sent him a smile. Tim's pulse quickened. "Oh, forget Carol Jantz back home. A guy could really fall hard for a lady like Linda Entwistle." Tim could feel a stupendous crush squeezing in on him hard already. "No, talking object, this is just a novelization of Castlevania 2 from 1990 or so. And I have to do the entire fucking stream in a Boston accent because I lost the Faxanadu race on Saturday. And I got family from Boston, but I ain't. I'm just trying to talk like one of my fucking cousins when they have too many beers." But let's see. All good Castlevanians want to get rid the land of Dracula. All good people everywhere would want to get rid of a vampire, Simon, Linda admonished. However, to protect themselves, these people must deliver their messages in riddles and puzzles as well. Understood, said Simon impatiently. Much as I adore you, Linda, we really need to find the location of that rib. Oh yeah, this story is also an isekai talking object. What you need can be found, said Linda Entwistle, where love is joined and Sundays sound. And then with a flash of colored smoke, the image of Linda's face swept away, replaced by the previous clouds. Where love is joined and Sundays sound, said Simon, scratching. Well, now that doesn't make much sense, Linda. Love isn't a thing, so how can it be joined? And days don't make any sounds as far as I know. All Tim could think was he was glad this guy had a lot of goodness, bravery, and muscle, because he shouldn't have much in the way of brains. He wants us to go to a church, Simon. Love is joined by marriage, usually in a church. Any churches close by? Well, actually, there's only one church in Castlevania, so I guess that must be the one she wants us to go to. Let's just get to that church before any more of those weird ghouls show up. I enjoyed the energy boost, but I might not be as lucky next time with this sword. Perhaps we can get you another weapon. At least you'll have a choice if need be. They started off, Tim looking wistfully back behind them at the signpost where Linda Entwistle's face had been. Man, this book really loves saying people's full names every single time they're referenced. It's a lot. Chapter 9. The Church. The only church in Castlevania proved to be not only the old-fashioned European cathedral type, but a mighty big one, more than big enough, according to Simon, to fit all of Castlevania's citizens inside. This way, said Simon, gesturing impatiently for Tim to hurry. His footsteps echoed as he entered. The inside was lit by candles. Candles everywhere. Fucking more candles, it seemed, than 1,000 birthday cakes combined. Ahead, Tim could see Simon walking down an aisle. The place smelled of candle wax and age, and it all seemed ancient and holy and shit. Tim hurried along to catch up with his friend. The echoes of his own footsteps skidded along the floor excitedly, without the sound of authority of his friends. "Wait up," he called to the hero, and his voice came back to him like from the walls of a choir. However, despite his call, Simon was intent upon his goal, the altar. When Simon reached it, he took the handle of his whip and knocked on the wood 3 times. However, hold on. I lost my place. Almost immediately, a man wearing a gray hooded robe stepped out from the alcove. He walked up to Simon. "Yes, my son." "I am on a quest, brother. I seek to rid this land of the curse of Dracula." Tim walked up and opened his mouth to make a quip. However, something stilled him. There was something about this place, but especially about this holy man, that said, "No jokes, please." The monk looked at Simon and then over to Tim. The monster's evil even penetrates the walls of this church. "Yes, you can help us, though." "Indeed, I shall do what I can," the monk said solemnly. His hand reached back and he took off his hood. His eyes fairly sparkled with good humor, but the frown on his face showed he knew well how serious the situation was. Hold on, I just gotta take a sip of my tea. "We're having a white elephant sale of certain items to benefit charity. Have you sufficient coin that you can buy these things?" "Ah," said Tim. "Simon, this must be part of what Linda was talking about. He wants to pass these things along in an indirect manner." Tim rummaged through his pockets and came up with 2 quarters, a dime, 3 nickels, and a penny. By the time he put his hand to offer the coins, Simon was already tinkling 3 gold pieces into the outstretched palm of the monk. "Thank you, Brother Simon." The man turned and retrieved a wooden box from the altar behind him. "Your items of purchase are enclosed." The monk handed Simon the box and began to walk away back into the cloisters of the church. "Hey, wait," called Tim. "What about the puzzle I'm supposed to solve, about the next part of our journey?" The monk turned around and gazed at Tim quizzically. "Oh, you mean the part about where to find Dracula's rib?" Tim was astounded. "Shh," he said. "It's all supposed to be hush-hush." "The rib, my friend, would be at Berkeley Mansion. You just leave to the right from here," he gestured, "and take Bulgaria Road straight on into Jova Woods. Now be forewarned, the paths are very confusing there, but I'm sure you'll muddle through." Tim's mouth had dropped. "But what about, Dracula might hear you." The monk shrugged. "I'll take my chance." With that, the monk left them. "Well, there's a brave fellow for you," said Simon. "Now let's see what we've got here in this box, shall we?" He set it down onto a pew and opened the lid. Tim was still overwhelmed by the monk. Wow, what a guy. Too bad the rest of the Castlevanians ain't as brave as he is. The rest of the Castlevanians don't have the trappings of a church to protect them. They're out in the middle of all that darkness. Simon pulled out a large flask. "Excellent. Look at what we have here, Tim." "Great, a canteen of water," said Tim sarcastically. "Ah, but not just any water," said Simon, holding the flask reverently. "Holy water." "Well, that's all well and good, but what does it do?" Simon seemed baffled by that one. "We'll have to find out, won't we?" "What else?" Simon retrieved 2 whips. Tim recognized them immediately. They were thorn whips. Long, beautifully crafted thorn whips. "Excellent," said Simon. "The battles with the ghouls damaged my other whip. Now I have a new one. And you have another weapon if you care to use it." Could try," said Tim. "Still, I'm getting pretty good with the sword, huh?" Simon said nothing. Okay, but I'm getting better, aren't I?" Simon raised an eyebrow. Tim held out his hand. Just how do you snap one of these babies anyway? Tim gave him the whip. Just takes practice, Tim. Practice. Keep on doing it, and that's the way you do it correctly. This is one of the lessons your video games have taught you, is it not? Could you win the game when you first tried them? No, but this is different. They were fun. All of life is not fun, Timothy Bradley. Suddenly getting real. If you learn nothing else from this adventure, then you should learn that. So what else do we have here? Simon reached in, grabbing something and lifted it out. First, Tim thought it was a diamond. And if it was a diamond, it was the biggest that Tim had ever seen. But then he saw it wasn't a diamond. Although it was mostly white, it had streaks of red in it. Tim had never seen anything at all like that in a diamond. Some sort of crystal, he said in wonder even as it sparkled and shone like a fireworks display. Yes, said Simon. And if my hunch is correct, then not only is it a magic crystal. Simon took a deep breath, exhaling with a weariness of the weight of a whole dimension on his shoulders. It is the key to finding Dracula's rib in Barclay Mansion. I don't suppose you mean the barbecue type, do you? Simon looked at Tim with total confusion. Never mind. Dumb joke. Hey, it was my dumb jokes that drove Dracula off, wasn't it? True, but you lack a certain gravity in your character. Well, I don't feel like I'm about to float off, if that's what you mean. This shall be one of my missions on this quest, said Simon. I shall make you a more serious young man. And I, said Tim, will make you have a good laugh or two. Simon grunted. We'll see. He turned and started marching off back to the exit of the church. Tim tried his thorn whip. All he managed to do was knock over a bunch of candles into a baptismal font. The flames hissed out. Oh, said the voice of the brother, echoing with sarcasm through the church. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Tim wound the whip back up, grabbed his satchel, and raced after Simon. This is dreadful stuff. Like, absolutely dreadful. I might stop at 11. We'll see how far we are. We're almost halfway through the book. Which is... God. I don't know if I want to finish this. Chapter 10. A Rib Tickler. Tim Bradley had seen some big fancy houses in his life, but never before had he seen anything like Barclay Mansion. Oh, looks pretty intense, he told Simon Belmont. An interesting word for a house of evil, said Simon, grimly. Simon looked ill, as though he was struggling with something inside him he didn't want to talk about. Barclay Mansion was a bad place before Dracula ever came to Castlevania. The house where a great baron once killed his entire family, his servants and guests, and was there beheaded for his crimes by the law. They say it's haunted now by at least 1,000 ghosts. Tim Bradley gulped. He could believe it. The house certainly looked like a haunted house, from the Gothic architecture to the creepy mist that overhung like a grave shroud. And from the outside he could smell rotten timbers and the mustiness of hundreds of years of misuse. This was one creepy place. Prepare, Timothy Bradley, for experiences that shall stretch and perhaps distort your mind. A smile touched Simon Belmont's lips. As we enter the doors of this great house, I am reminded of the beginning of one of your jokes, Timothy Bradley. Knock, knock. You know, Hanabi, part of the reason I decided to do a reading stream while doing the Boston accent punishment is because I don't think I would have been able to maintain the Boston accent while I was playing a video game. But you have a good point that I have made this harder for myself in the same way that Woozle made Atlantis No Nazo even more unbearable by torturing his pathetic little tongue with the mildest bit of spice. But I am doing my best. Doing my fucking best here. You hate it here, Woozle. How do you think I fucking feel? Christ, kid. Tim looked at Simon and then back at Barclay Mansion. You want me to say who's there? Well, I'm not gonna. Took in a long breath. Because I don't really want to fucking know. Tim Bradley had always wondered what a video game would look like if it became real. Woolsey, you're late to class. I go outside, I find you fucking loitering at the bubbler. What you fucking doing, kid? Get in here. He'd always wondered about how the strange zigs and zags of a game would translate to 3 dimensions, along with taste and smell. However, he truly had never wanted to know what Castlevania would look like. It was too scary to contemplate. However, now he knew, and the truth was not pleasant. This whole dimension seemed somehow tilted like an old horror movie. This was certainly the case with the interior of Berkeley Mansion. The floors and the ceilings and the walls just weren't square, did not meet at right angles. The place not only smelled of old shoes and dead socks, smelled of forgotten things in the back of the fridge, smelled of a terrible past on Earth, something better off buried. The door was no problem. There was no door. They walked into the main hallway through sagging open doorway. Draperies and tapestries hung in ruins about a great hall to the right. Clutter and antiques lay strewn in the wreckage. Which way? Simon wondered, stroking his chin. I would think down, wouldn't you? Suggested Tim. Why would you say that? I don't know. Dracula likes to be close to the earth. Reminds me of the joke, why does a vampire take cold medicine? Simon made a face. To stop coughing. I do not understand the joke, but your reasoning is correct. What else do you see here in this room that you think gives us information or might be of use? Tim surveyed the cluttered chamber. Good thought. You know, the thing about Nintendo games is there's always something around somewhere that you need to use somewhere else. This is not a game of any kind, said Simon sternly. This is deadly serious. Yeah, I know, but I still think we should look for something that doesn't seem to belong here. Something that looks like it might be useful later. Tim began to walk along the odds and ends. Now look at this, for instance. He picked up a broken cuckoo clock. A bird on a broken spring hung out of it like a weird alien tongue. I don't see a thing that this would be good for. He tossed the thing back in a heap of junk. For this? I don't know. Maybe a possibility. He bent down and pointed at something on the ground. What is it? Asked Simon. It was an arrow, but not just any arrow. It looked like an Indian arrow with colorful feathers on one end and a stone arrowhead on the other. Woof! Look at where it's pointed, said Tim. At the fireplace? So? I guess you wouldn't know, but these kind of mansions always have hidden passages, and they usually have them behind the fireplace with marble mantelpieces. Simon looked puzzled. Why is that? Because of these. Tim walked toward the fireplace. On top of the mantelpiece was a row of candlesticks. For hidden passages, you need handle openers. He pulled on one of the candles. It was just a candlestick, and it came off. Ha! So much for your theories. Please, Simon, said Tim, still feeling self-confident on the subject. There were 10 brass candlesticks on the mantelpiece, any one of which might be the secret handle that opened a hidden door. Tim tried another candlestick. No go. Another. Nope. He was starting to get worried. I don't know, maybe I am wrong. Maybe. Sticking out from the fireplace was an old grate. Looking over to Simon, he did not see it. He tripped over it, falling flat on his face. His dignity was hurt far worse than his body. Tim, are you all right? Simon rushed over to check, suddenly all seriousness again. Yeah, stupid of me, but I'm kind of a klutz at home anyway. Wait, what's that sound? The sound was a metallic scraping, like cement skidding along a steel floor. Tim looked around at the same time that Simon did. One of the dusty, cobwebby panels inside the fireplace was slowly sliding away, opening a section of musty, mysterious darkness. Simon looked down at his fallen friend. It would appear that I have an apology to make, Timothy Bradley. Wow, there is a secret corridor. Fear tickled his backbone. On the other hand, how do we know for sure this isn't a trap? Simon shook his head. A trap would be more alluring, more obvious. No, you have done well. Let us progress. We, after all, have the torches we got at the inn to light our way. And they keep just referring back to shit they got at the inn. Like Tim got a sword there that we didn't know about till he needed to use it. This book is... Not that I expected it to be better written than this, but holy shit, man. Let's see, where were we? Yep. Yeah, let's not try to burn anything down. This looks like a real fire trap here. Simon started for the passageway, his torch held out before him. A sudden gust of wind blew out from the passageway, blowing out both torches. The room was plunged into darkness. Well, so much for that, said Tim. Wait a minute, though. That arrow. Maybe there's something magical about that arrow. I mean, it did show us the way to the passage. What do you mean? Just a hunch. I mean, this sounds like something from a video game. You need to find objects, you need to use objects. Sometimes those objects work together. So it follows the arrow may affect whatever magic we already got. The crystal we got at the church. Worth a try, right? Tim heard the sound of uncertain footsteps as Simon searched his way back to the arrow. With a grunt, he knocked into something. Tim could hear the sounds of his hands feeling about the floor. Found it, he said. Okay, take the crystal and touch the arrowhead to it. Very well. It was like turning on an electric light bulb. The crystal ignited with a white light that lit the whole section of the room. Simon gasped with surprise and wonder, blinking with the brightness. Yeah, that'll do the trick, kid, said Tim, brushing himself off as he got up. Still, since you got the light, maybe you should go first. Yes, said Simon. Bring the torches, though. We could find a light later, and who knows how fickle this magical light will be. The passageway proved as dusty and murky as Tim had expected, but otherwise it was bare of danger. They followed it to a set of stairs which they descended. 3 flights down, they came to a dead end. Simon, using the light, scoured the walls for some sort of opening. He found nothing. Well, this is a fine fix, said Tim, shaking his head. I don't know, though. It doesn't really make sense, does it? I mean, why would there be a stairway down to a dead end? You are the puzzle solver, Timothy. You know, you can call me Tim. Tim. Nah, it doesn't sound right. He stepped very close to the wall to inspect it closely, holding the arrow and the crystal up for better illumination. And a very strange thing happened. The crystal dulled in its brilliance. The closer the magic thing got to the wall, the lower dipped the light. Simon stared at this phenomenon for a moment, drawing the crystal back and forth in the air to determine if in fact it was the wall that was dimming the crystal. Something evil is blocking this passageway, he said, which means it must be something protecting the rib of Dracula. It looks that way. How are we going to unblock it? We're not magicians. Should I start telling the wall jokes? Hey wall, what's the stuff between an elephant's toes? No, this time I know what to do. Simon dug into his pack and drew out the large flask filled with the holy water they received from the monk. If indeed this is evil, it's not going to like this. He tossed a splash of the water upon the wall. The effect was immediate. It was as if Simon tossed a stick of dynamite, with a profound kablam. The whole wall caved in a cloud of dust. Tim took in a lungful and began coughing himself hoarse. However, he was gratified to see the crystal was fairly bursting now with brilliance. You were right, Simon. Which reminds me of a joke about... Simon held up a hand. Shh. Look into the next room, Tim. He held forth the white crystal, which cast forth its light deep into the adjacent chamber. Tim looked, and the astonishment overtook him. Well, don't just stand there, came a cackling voice like something out of a rest home for witches. Enter if you dare. I like that this is how they explain why you gotta fucking throw holy water every 2 steps when you're going around in the mansions in the fucking video game. Every other fucking step you take in Castlevania 2 in the mansion, you gotta throw the fucking holy water down to see where the fake fucking floor is so you don't fall through and have to do the whole shit over again. Fucking... They took so long to say that one fucking thing. I ain't reading this fucking hint. Chapter 11. Miss Esiderada. The next chamber was not the stock cellar room that Tim Bradley had expected. Far from it. Instead, it looked as though they had just knocked down the wall of ye old curiosity shop. At the very least, it seemed to be some sort of room filled with antique chairs, lamps, mirrors, knickknacks, doodad, and what's-nots, to say nothing of what's-its. In the very middle of the room, sitting in a creaky old rocker, was a creaky old lady with a very large black cat square in the middle of her ample lap, purring as it was petted. Come in, you two, come... I can't modify a voice once I start it. Fucking come in, you two. I'm not gonna bite, I promise, she said with a reassuring matronly smile. I can't thank you enough for knocking down that stupid, silly wall. I was just thinking about trying to start chipping away at it with one of these sweet little antique sledgehammers over there. And now that wouldn't have been very ladylike, now would it? Even though she was pretty old and wrinkled, she was somehow very pretty, with a wealth of blonde curls above her head and a set of healthy white teeth behind a brilliant smile. Her eyes were bright blue. She fairly glowed with kindness, only dimmed by the paleness of being inside for so long. Tim liked her immediately. He had the feeling that not only was she of no harm to them, she might even help. Also, I gotta say, this fucking book is horny for every fucking female character they talk about. Tim's mom they talk about is pretty hot. Carol Jancy's fucking teenage fantasy. Linda. Fucking this old lady. Why is this book so horny? Fucking book for kids. Simon evidently had the same impression. Tim could sense him relaxing his guard. However, do you find yourself down here, madam? He asked politely. If Simon had been wearing a hat, Tim suspected the valiant hero would have taken it off. The old woman's eyes faintly glittered with good humor. Well, now, you talk about good humor, talk about fucking Hoodsie Cup. That's what I want, fucking get some ice cream, kid. Well, now there's an interesting story for you. But first things first, my name is Esadorada Perkins. And pray tell, who are these old eyes gazing upon? Tim and Simon introduced themselves. Simon Belmont, well, hush my Simon Belmont, well, hush my puppies. You wouldn't remember this, but I dandled you on my knee when you were just knee-high to a bat. Esadorada put a hand up to her mouth. Oh dear, how unfortunate a term, especially in these circumstances. Go ahead with your story, urged Tim. Oh dear, of course, how I do go on sometimes. She giggled almost girlishly. Caretaker. Oh, hold on. You must understand that I am the caretaker of Berkeley Mansion. Caretaker, said Tim, almost unable to hide his surprise. Immediately he was embarrassed about his blurting out, but by the look of amusement in Esadorada Perkins's eyes, he could see that she didn't take it as an insult. Not what you think, Tim. You see, I take care that Berkeley Mansion looks ramshackle. I distribute the cobwebs, the dust, and the clutter just so. A work of art, I say, and it took years to get it this way. And now that rascal Dracula has locked me down here, unable to appreciate my own handiwork. However, thanks to you all, I am now free again. I can go up and drift through my lovely rooms and enjoy the delightful dilapidation. That's all very well and good, Esadorada Perkins, said Simon. However, we must tell you that we are on a very important quest. Oh yeah, of course, you must be after the Rib of Dracula. Well, it's downstairs, and you're welcome to it as far as I'm concerned. It's caused me absolutely nothing but a headache. The way it pounds on its drum sometimes. Pounds on a drum, said Tim. Yeah, it hasn't got much else to do, being just a rib and all. I must say... Holy shit. This is so bad. And I must say, it must feel a bit isolated without the rest of Dracula to keep it company. So it's got this silly drum and sometimes it pounds on it. What do you think? Think maybe it reminds it of the beat of its owner's heart? I wouldn't think that Dracula had a heart, said Tim. Oh yeah, and that's one of the things we must find, said Simon. A heart, yes, but definitely a very black heart. Yes, well, I dare say, said Esadorada. None of my business, but anything I can do against Count Dracula will do my heart good. How can you help us then? Asked Simon. Let me see. Esadorada stroked a double chin. Well, for starters, I can tell you how to get down safely to where the rib is located. And I suppose I might give you what you need to take the rib safely. Tricky business at best that, and mind you, Count Dracula's minions may be stupid, but the Count himself isn't. He set up some safeguards for his rib. We're prepared. Sorry, Cat, you're gonna have to get off, said Esadorada, gently lifting the fat cat from a lap and placing it down on the floor. Now then, let's see what we got here. She turned her attention to a pile of junk in the middle of the room, pulling this out, pushing that aside. Sewing scissors? No, thread won't help. Curling iron? Maybe with Dracula's hair, but not his rib. She pulled out an old boot, a hat, a bicycle pump. You find some strange things in haunted houses, she explained. Even ghosts sometimes. What do you know? Here's something I think you'll be able to use. A steak. Tim blinked. What, eat after we cook it on the barbecue with the rib? No, you clearly think in puns, young man. An unhealthy habit, nah. She held up a length of wood. Hold on, just changing the music. A steak, oh, thought Tim. That kind of steak. It was long and had one blunt end and one pointed end. This is the kind of steak you'll need to deal with Dracula, said the old woman. She thrust it into Simon's hands. Go down the staircase past that door. Take a left at the bottom and watch out for the troll. You'll see the dungeon to your left. There's skeletons hanging from chains. That's how you'll know you're in the right dungeon. Well, that's right out of the game. Get past whatever monsters lurk down there. Climb the steps, touch the rib with the steak, and hey, it's yours. Bring it up here, dearie, so I can have a look at it, alright? She started going through the junk on the floor again, humming a tune to herself, totally oblivious to the presence of two heroes in her room. You'll give us more directions when we get back? She turned around, smiling happily upon them. Well, of course I will, loves. Also, there might be another goodie or two I unearthed from this pile with your names on it. Toddle off now, then. Have a good time. Mind the monsters. Oh, and if you see the spirit of Dracula pop up, give the old blackguard my worst, will you? That, as Dorada Perkins turned her attention back to her work. Off, then, said Simon Belmont, pointing with the stake toward the door. To the dungeon. To the dungeon with a bludgeon, said Tim Bradley, and off they went. If the previous part of Barclay Mansion had been dirty, then the dungeons below could be called absolutely, undeniably, irrefutably, totally filthy. In short, a real mess. Maybe we should fire up the torches again, huh? Said Tim, chilled to the bone with the cold gloom into which they were descending. That's a good question, gentle corgis. I would think Jones's, since it's not separated from the rest of him. Glimmy is also a real mess. Me too, Glimmy, because I have to do this whole fucking stream in a Boston accent because I lost a race on Saturday. I'm doing my best, but it's really hard to read a whole fucking book with a Boston accent. How are you doing today? Besides being a real mess. Let's see. She'll make do with the white crystal. Look, see how nicely it glows so close to the stake? So can stake must have magical properties as well. Good magical properties. Well, all I can say is that I wish the good Lady Lita had given us a magical heater. You're beginning to complain too much, Timothy Bradley. A low funny moment. Did you think a quest of this nature would be comfortable? Tim thought about that. True, when he sat down for a game of Castlevania, it was usually in his temper-controlled room at home, be it air-conditioned or heated. All I can say is this experience certainly makes me appreciate heroes more. He rubbed his rumbling stomach. Especially hero sandwiches. Boy, could I use one right now with some ham and cheese, salami, lettuce, tomato. Gee, don't forget hot peppers. Hold the mayo. You're a very strange young man, said Simon. Tim laughed. He thought about digging into his pack for another hunk of chocolate, but he'd eaten so many already he had to admit that even in this frightening and suspenseful moment, he couldn't possibly indulge himself in another. It was on the lower level, just where the lady caretaker had told them to expect it, that Tim and Simon encountered the troll. It was not quite what they had expected. Chapter 12. Stakeout. That it was a monster, there can be no doubt. That was the most peculiar monster Tim Bradley had ever seen in all the movies, comics, or television he'd experienced. There could be no doubt either. Good grief, Tim gasped, getting his sword ready. Prepare for battle, my fine assistant, shouted Simon Belmont, brandishing his whip. I think we shall have an excellent little tussle against this one. The monster was tall. It walked like a man, but that was where the resemblance ended. Its face was lizard hide. Its head looked as though someone had jammed a basketball through a fanged mouth. It looked, thought Tim, like the creature from the Black Lagoon after a long spell on the wrong side of the lead shield in a nuclear reactor. It growled. Back, O villainous creature of the night, said Simon Belmont, bringing his arm back for a snap of the whip. Hey, hold on there, said the thing. I said, because I just stubbed my toe trying to get away from you guys. Want to give me a break? I'm glad the growl surprised you, Glimmy. That was the goal of it. I do not trust you, said Simon, and he flung the whip over his shoulder, preparing to strike. However, Tim stepped in and stayed Simon's hand, causing the whip to strike the wall instead of the monster. Why did you do that? Screamed Simon Belmont, his face growing red. I don't remember if anger is one of those 7 deadly sins, said Tim, but you sure are getting out of control. I don't care how ugly the thing is, it's asked for a chance to explain what it's up to. But it's a creature of Dracula, said Simon, growing more furious. Hey, simmer down, Simon. Looks like you're more a creature of Dracula now than it is. You can show a little mercy. Just because it's big, wicked-looking, and ugly doesn't mean it works for Dracula. Please, said the creature. My companion is correct. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Freddy. Say, no kidding, we have a guy in the horror movies back home. His name's Freddy, too. But Freddy with an I-E? No, I suppose it's Freddy with a Y. Well, there you go. All good monsters have their names end with an I-E. All bad ones with the Y. Helps keep things straight. Good monsters? Said Simon skeptically. Give a fellow a break, said Freddy, rearing to his full height with no small amount of indignity. A clatter of loose scales tumbled to the floor like snow. I have a few bad habits, and we all lose our temper sometimes. But all in all, I must say I'm a pretty nice guy. Why then has Dracula not possessed you? Don't you think he hasn't tried? But you see, we smart monsters. Freddy tapped his bulbous head cagily. We know how to outwit the old skunk. It's the dumb ones that are in its way. Not that we don't get tempted sometimes. Yeah, I mean, Hanabi, how else are you supposed to adapt a Nintendo game with very little dialogue into a novel for kids? The fuck else are you gonna do? Yes, said Simon. I too have a temptation problem. This is one of the reasons that Timothy Bradley is here with me, to remind me that I am being tempted. And again, he has done an excellent job, and I thank him. And I thank him too, said Freddy, bloodshot thyroid eyes bulging out almost comically. But for you, good Sir Timothy, I most surely would have been snapped back into ye old nasty dimension from whence all monsters good and bad arise. And let me tell you, that is not a nice place. No, I far prefer the twisted passages of Barclay Mansion and Veros Woods to that other dimension. Oh, Hanabi, I gotta tell you, I read a little bit of the Mega Man novel. It's the worst thing I ever fucking read in my life. It's unbelievable. I kind of want to read it on stream. I want to get somebody with me who plays a lot of Mega Man games, get them on stream with me and have them react to it and maybe read some of the other dialogue with me. And not in a fucking Boston accent this time. I'm trying my best in my little asides here to stay in my accent, but I keep fucking it up. It's really not easy to stay in an accent. Oh, they gotta be better than this, Gondola. This is fucking dreadful. This is fucking unbelievable. We're more than halfway now. I don't think we'll finish it tonight. Because it's almost 11 p.m. already. I had to start late tonight. I had a meeting in the evening. Let's see. Oh yeah. We're talking to Freddy here. The troll in the fucking dungeon was a Freddy with an IE means he's a good monster. Freddy with a Y means he's a bad monster. Fucking bullshit. That's where we're trying to send Dracula, isn't it? Said Tim excitedly. Precisely, said Simon. But he stubbornly clings to this world. Why is this, Freddy monster? What is the allure of the land of Castlevania that Count Dracula should want to stay here when it would be so much easier for him to just let go and drift back to his home dimension? Simple, said Freddy. Here, he's big stuff. Back home, he's just another creep. Here, he's boss. Back there, he takes orders. But who from? The biggest monster of them all, that's who. The master of death, Thanatos. Freddy Monster shivered. Gazookas! It gives me the willies just to think about him. Just pray you don't ever run into him. Thank you for your advice, Freddy Monster, said Simon with the utmost seriousness. But perhaps you can be of further help to us. Sure. Advice I can give, but I can't help you get to Dracula. We've got sort of a truce, you see. That's all right, Tim said. All we need some help. The lady caretaker upstairs mentioned that there are all kinds of unpleasant creatures down in this cellar. Oh yes, she would. Well, we're just monsters, don't you know? Well, I guess I can put the word out. Can't guarantee much, though. Freddy smiled. Maybe you can also tell us where the dungeon with Dracula's rib is. Oh, sure, that smelly old thing. Freddy Monster pointed a claw. It's that way. Take a right at the fork. Thanks, Freddy, said Tim. You've been a real help. You're a real credit to Monsterdom. Freddy Monster took a deep bow, dislodging a number of small furry insects from the crevices on his body, all of which scurried back into his hairy feet for shelter. Glad to be of service to you, gentlemen. Tim and Simon bowed in return. Then they headed deeper into the darkness of the dungeons. The skeletons were what tipped Tim to the fact that they were in the right place. It was dark and dank, just like a dungeon was supposed to be. Somewhere water dripped, and in the distance monsters shuffled. But it was when Tim smacked into the hanging bones that he knew they'd made it. They hung from the ceiling like grisly decorations, grim reminders of exactly what sort of fellow Dracula was. When Tim hit the bones, they clattered and clinked around like castanets on Celebration Day. The fuck is Celebration Day? Tim jumped back, scared nearly witless. Oh, looks like Bone Day in biology class, he said, trying to make a joke so he wouldn't be spooked. Simon grunted. And look, on that platform up there, the item that we seek. Tim, still wary of those skeletons. In this world, you never knew when skeletons would come alive and clattered down to grab a hold of your neck and squeeze. Stared up. No bones about it. I mean, yeah, there it is. And there it was indeed. The rib was bleached in a bright white. It sat on a short pedestal and was encased in a globe made of crystal. Simon strode toward the winding steps that led toward the rib. However, before he could get very far, there was a sudden rumbling sound from deep in the earth. The floor shook. A fissure opened in the rock, and something emerged that made Tim want to just forget the whole thing, run to his house dimension, and hide under his bed. It was an eyeball. It was a flying eyeball. Chapter 13. The Ghostly Eyeball. "I see you," said the eyeball. It was a big thing with trailing veins and surrounded by a ghostly mist of ectoplasm. It was mostly white with blue and red pulsing blood vessels. Unlike other eyeballs, however, this one had a big mouth filled with nasty, sharp teeth, as well as 2 arms filled with claws. "Yikes," said Tim. "You're just like Arnold Schwarzenegger's weight trainer." That stopped the ghostly eyeball in its tracks. "Why ever do you say that?" "Because," said Tim, "you got a big pupil." That's the worst fucking joke I've ever read in my life. The ghostly eyeball had no lids, so it could not blink. It could only stare. "Is that supposed to be funny?" it growled, gnashing its teeth sharply. "Stand back. You'll get no farther. I'm the god for the rib of Dracula." "Wait, didn't you talk to your buddy Freddy, monster?" said Tim. "Freddy? Pfft, he's no friend of mine. If he turned on the master, then he's surely a traitor of the most heinous sort. Thought all you monsters were heinous. Pfft, enough of this talk. Go away or I'll devour you." "Sorry," said Simon Belmont. "Our course is set. We must follow through. It is you who must stand aside." Yeah, I don't fucking know what they mean by Celebration Day, Hanabi. The thing started for him. Simon snapped his whip, striking the thing square in its cornea. The monster was only moved back mere inches, and then it advanced again. Tim looked down at his own whip. He still hadn't gotten the hang of using it. He dropped it and drew his sword. "How about a poke in the eye, Ghostly?" he said, swinging with all his might. The ghostly eyeball flew nimbly aside, and Tim's swing went astray. He spun wildly. The blade whacked into one of the skeletons, knocking it apart. Bones flew everywhere. "You see, you cannot harm me," said the monster. "I see all. Suddenly, the thing was enveloped by a cloth. Simon Belmont had taken off his cloak and draped it nimbly over the creature. The thing tried to tear free, but it could not. "I can't see!" he cried. "I can't fucking see!" Simon then took the arrow and jabbed it hard under the edge of the cloth. There was a loud pop. A spume of green gases, smelling of bilge water, billowed out raggedly, followed by a burst of light. Then the cape flooded to the ground, limp as a flat tire. It's gone," gasped Tim. "Yeah, tossed back to its home dimension." "The dimension of monsters," Tim shivered. "That's one place I sure don't want to take in a walk on a cold, lonely night. Well, Castlevania's bad enough." But Simon wasn't listening. He was busy looking up at the pedestal upon which rested the rib of Dracula. With the ghostly eyeball gone, Tim felt much more self-confident about this whole business. "I'll get it," he said, and rushed ahead of Simon, running smack into an invisible wall. "Ugh," he said, almost falling backwards onto the floor. "I almost broke my fucking nose." "You know, I think that this arrow may help us again," said Simon. He advanced to the spot where the invisible wall had stopped Tim. He stabbed at the wall with the arrow's head. The wall shimmered like a torn sandwich wrap. Simon walked forward through where the wall had been, then up the stairs, then up the steps. He touched the crystal globe with the arrow, and it too dissolved. Then he touched the rib of Dracula with the arrow. The rib shuddered and radiated a faint sparkle. He picked it up. "We got it," said Simon triumphantly. "We got the first part, Tim." That was when the skeletons began to move. Skeletons shuddered and shook. "Yikes," said Tim. "Dracula's making no bones about the fact he doesn't like us." He stepped up to stand beside the blonde hero to be a help, and also enjoy the protection of Simon's excellent whip work. When he turned, he saw the skeletons were joining together, and from their joined bones and skulls a face was forming. The face of Count Dracula. "Bah!" he cried in a voice that sounded like the rattle snap of 1,000 bones breaking.
"You think you've beaten me, but you have so much further to go yet. I have more tricks up my sleeve that will not be so easy for you to deal with. You shall not uproot me from my adopted home."
Simon stepped forward. "I have sworn upon all that is good, true, and just that you shall be removed from my beloved land of Castlevania, banished forever, never to return." "Right," cried Tim, feeling full of himself. "You can go to New York City and visit the Vampire State Building." Yeah, said Simon. Go join the other pains in the neck. The bones rattled with profound annoyance. Simon, said Tim flabbergasted, you made a joke. You actually told a joke. Simon seemed equally astounded. My goodness, I did tell a fucking joke. The vampire, however, was not amused. The skeleton bones he had possessed shook and rattled. Bones and teeth began to flake off and clatter the dungeon floor.
You shall not beat me, mortal,
cried the voice of Dracula as it echoed away.
You shall not best my powers, I swear.
And then, with the howling of a terrible wind, the spirit essence ripped away from the dungeon. The skeleton bones all tumbled to the floor in a huge heap. We did it, cried Tim. We beat Dracula. However, Simon Belmont was not convinced. We have far yet to go, Timothy Bradley, very far to go. Alright, class, I think I got maybe 1 or 2 more chapters in me. It's getting late. And this book is fucking terrible. Oh, but I can't fucking deal with the subtitle of this chapter. You take the high road and I'll take the low road and I'll get into trouble before you. It's fucking Loch Lomond. I can't fucking deal with that. Several hours later, in the middle of Algeba Woods, Timothy Bradley's satchel, the one with all his chocolate, flew away and splashed into the center of a quicksand pool. It sank without a trace. Tim, who had just fallen flat on his face after tripping over a root in the path, watched all this with a horror approach and panic. His chocolate! His lovely chocolate! All his Hershey bars were in that sack, and his M&Ms. The M&Ms with peanuts, too, the ones he'd been craving. All his chocolate was gone. Something wrenched inside of him. Felt like screaming, but he couldn't let it out. Simon would hear him. Simon had taken Tim aside and told him maybe he was eating too many chocolate bars to be good either for his nerves or his health. Tim had asked him if Simon thought he were his mother, for goodness sake, and Simon said no, but later on the quest he felt he should point these things out. Deep down, Tim knew Simon was right. Simon pretty quickly figured out Tim was hooked on the stuff, and it wasn't particularly good for him. So Tim had agreed he wouldn't have another candy bar for 2 hours. So of course 1 hour later he desperately craved one, and he snuck off behind some trees and, well, he'd lost all his chocolate. And things had been going so well too. Miss Perkins, the lady custodian of Berkeley Mansion, had told them she'd had a vision. Their next destination would be Rover Mansion. But how, pray tell, they asked her, would they get to Rover Mansion since they had no map? Go to the town of Veros, the woman had said. One of the gentlemen in the resistance movement will sell you a special dagger. And also there was a chain whip available. You gotta mention the upgrades from the video game. You gotta do it. This chain whip would come in very handy, Miss Perkins had promised them. Simon had no idea what a chain whip was, but when they went to Veros and found the man and bought it, he was quite pleased. The chain was actually a specially pleated material, very strong, with almost a magical feel to it. The dagger was very nice as well, a shiny silver thing. They checked the signpost to see where they should go next. The signpost had directed them to Algeba Woods. There they discovered a wall that shone most magically. I have to check this, Simon had said, which was okay by Tim since he felt like resting anyway. Simon found it impossible to cross the wall on his own, so he'd try splashing it with the holy water, the tactic that had been so helpful back in Berkeley Mansion. It worked. The wall had fallen down. Beyond it had been a glowing fire in a dish. A sacred flame, Simon had cried. Something I'd hoped we'd come across. Simon relit their torches from the sacred flame and told Tim he felt much less tempted under its light. Which was okay with Tim since he was tired of keeping track of the hero's odd mood swings. And so here they were, Algeba Woods, everything was hunky-dory, except for the fact that Tim lost his chocolate. Timothy, cried Simon Belmont from the trail the signpost had called Dobby's Path. Timothy Bradley, where are you? Over here, cried Tim, picking himself up and dusting himself off. He hurried back onto the path. Simon was anxious to keep moving. We've still got a lot of Dracula's body parts to find, he said, and very little time in which to do it. Together they set off again through the night. Imagine, thought Tim, me, the chocolate freak, in a land without chocolate. Well, I'd just have to live without it if you could call it living. The town of Algeba looked much like the other towns they'd visited in Castlevania, except that maybe it was darker, maybe it was dirtier, maybe it felt like the spirit of Dracula was even more in control. All in all, it made Tim happy that this flame was lighting their path was sacred, for Algiba felt absolutely evil. "Just over here, I think," cried Simon. He stepped quickly down the cobblestones, holding up his torch. The illumination showed a sign depicting a vampire with long fangs, pointed ears, a bat on his shoulder, and a red no sign stamped over him. "The ye old anti-vampire shop," Simon explained. Holy shit. "Come in with me, Tim. We'll get some things we need here." Don't you think this is the one place that Dracula will be sure we will go? I mean, they'll have a trap or something set up, right? I'm doing my fucking best, Yusha. It's literally the Ghostbusters logo with fucking Dracula. Oh, fucking... We're on page 81 of 137. Do we really want to finish this shit tonight? I want to read it again. We're gonna fucking finish it. I don't care. I'm gonna be fucking tired tomorrow. I'm gonna need to go have fucking dunks in the morning. Get my iced coffee. Fucking A. Nah, he despises the things that are kept inside. And besides, the owner will be the one person in Algiba who'll be openly defying of Dracula's rule. Come, Timothy, there's no time to waste. Simon went through the door. Bell tinkled. Thinking it was a trap, Tim jumped. He was ready to run, but he realized, hey, a tinkling bell when you go into a shop is perfectly normal. Cool it, pal. This is unbelievable. He went through the door. He found himself in a shop that smelled of a curious blend of tobacco, vinegar, spices, and most strongly of garlic. On the wall were displayed crosses of various shapes and sizes, some wooden, some silver, some made of other stuff. The place looked like an Italian deli, what with all the strings of garlic bulbs stretched around the room. Other stuff hung hither and thither, none of which Tim recognized. Whatever they were, it followed they must have something to do with getting rid of vampires. The shop was warm and cozy. Simon had been right. Tim felt safe here. This was like an oasis of safety in a desert of danger. "Yes, may I help you?" asked a suspicious voice. "Edward, my good friend," said Simon. "Do you not recognize me?" "Simon? Simon Belmont?" A big man dressed in a frayed topcoat stepped from the darkness of the back room. He wore a plaid scarf around his neck, even though the room was toasty warm, and he looked at them from above half-framed reading spectacles. He held out a large, hairy hand. Suddenly he pulled it back. "Wait a moment. Are you not aligned now with that demon Dracula? I'm the person who vanquished him." Fucking... I don't know why. Going back and forth between character dialogue is when I break accent most, and it's really hard to... I can't differentiate voices and maintain accents very well. I apologize. "I heard you struggle yet with his infection." "Oh. I've heard you struggle yet with his infection," growled the man in a bear-like gruff voice. "There's no way of telling whether or not you've succumbed to his domination. His presence floats now everywhere." "Old friend, how would I be able to last 15 seconds in the garlic soup of this atmosphere?" The man's wide face split into a grin, showing yellowed teeth. "Your logic is irrefutable. I wish we had time for a game of chess, yes?" "I'm afraid there are matters of far more gravity than chess, my friend," said Simon. "But allow me to introduce you to my new friend." Simon introduced Tim, who was surprised to be swept up in a great big garlicky bear hug. "Anyone who is a friend of the great hero of Castlevania, Simon Belmont, is a friend of mine," said the burly man. "My name is Edward Farquhar." Simon quickly filled Edward in on their adventures. "We were told by Miss Perkins when we left Barclay Mansion we would most definitely need lots of garlic and lots of laurels. I knew exactly where to get it." "You came to the right place for garlic," laughed Edward Farquhar. "But as for laurels, I can't say I'll have to dig deep into my supply room. May I ask why laurels? They're a symbol of victory, and that seems a long way away, if I may say so." "The power of positive thinking," piped Tim. Both Castlevanians looked at him as if he were from another dimension. Which, okay, Tim guessed, he was. Still can't get over the fact that this is a fucking isekai. Well then," said Edward Farquhar, becoming serious. "Perhaps I'd better go see about those laurels." With no further ado, he turned around and walked into the darkness of the back room. A light flicked on, and Tim could hear the big man grunting as he rummaged through packages and stored materials galore. "Gee," said Tim, "I hope he's got some laurels. Miss Perkins was very specific." "You're gonna need laurels," she said. "Most definitely laurels." "I have every confidence in my friend," said Simon. "If there are laurels to be had anywhere in Castlevania, it is in this shop." Tim said, "Whatever you say, I just..." Suddenly, a teddy bear sailed through the opening. bounced against the opposite wall and landed face up, button eyes staring up at Tim. Immediately afterward, a stuffed giraffe followed its cloth cousin. Then immediately afterward, a stuffed koala bear. What does he have back there? Said Tim. A kitty zoo? Oh, Hardcore Hunter, it gets so much worse. I read the ending ahead of time. It's so fucking bad. It reminds me, Simon. Who's the beautiful gray? Who is beautiful gray and wears a glass slipper? Tim, I hardly think. Cinderelephant. I don't understand. Come on. You heard the story Cinderella and the glass slipper. I mean, you could have been Prince Charming yourself, Simon. Simon blinked. Prince Charming? Never mind, you really are no fun, you know? This is not a fun situation, Timothy. My very soul is at stake, to say nothing of the future of my beloved Castlevania. Tim felt the definite craving for chocolate. Now, all of the seriousness and especially all this garlic were getting to him. However, his sinking feelings were interrupted by yet more objects hurling from the back room. Gadzooks. Fucking. Gadzooks. Simon cried to Edward Farquhar. Also, I've got to say, Edward Farquhar is a fucking perfect name. Edward Farquhar, where did you get all this stuff? Farquhar stuck his big head out. In truth, I do not know. When I inherited this shop, much of what I own now was already there. Isn't that the dude from fucking Shrek? When I inherited this shop, much of what I own now is already here. I attempted to catalog it, but... What does this have to do with vampires? Asked Simon impatiently. Absolutely nothing. But isn't it neat? Edward, said Simon in a chastising manner, we really do need those laurels. Fucking literally Hardcore Hunter. Oh, yes, of course, right away. Laurels. The head ducked back into the back room. A minute more and it poked back outside. I think I have what you're looking for here. I think I have what you're looking for here, Simon. He brought out a handful of branches from a laurel tree. Astonishingly fresh for sitting around these past few centuries, I must say. I never noticed them before. They were sitting on top of this mirror here. I must say I hadn't noticed the mirror either. He pulled it out. It was a rolling mirror, a gray, oval, golden thing. And its glass was cloudy, just like the signpost back in Castlevania. Cloudy and getting cloudier. Great, murky, billowing puffs of gray were boiling across its surface. And then Tim noticed a face was becoming visible in the mirror. Simon, said Tim, look, I think we have company. Chapter 15. Red Rover, Blue Rover, will you come over? In the mirror was the beautiful face of Linda Entwistle. Because you can't make it too easy for the kids, Hanabi. They gotta read, they gotta learn to turn the pages, they gotta turn it upside down sometimes. Fucking kids are dumb. You can't give it to them for free. In the mirror was the beautiful face of Linda Entwistle. It was enough to make Tim Bradley forget about chocolate. She was so beautiful his heart leapt up and he could think of nothing but pleasing her. Linda, hello. Hello, Tim, she said. I cannot stay long. I came because there's great danger. There is. She started fading in and out of focus. Trouble in the... Linda, said Simon, stepping forward. We can't hear you. Speak up. Her image flickered in the mirror like bad reception on a TV screen. Cannot speak long, she managed to say. Your energy's running low and there are no ghouls now in Algeba. You must find a man in a gray suit from the resistance movement. He will upgrade your white crystal into something more powerful. This will give you more energy. What really would give him some energy, thought Tim, would be some serious chocolate. From there you must find your own way. Yeah, exactly. They could have got a fucking Magic School Bus book. They could have gotten literally anything but this. Then as suddenly she'd come, she disappeared. Linda! Cried Simon. Most curious emanation, said Edward Farquhar, clearly quite surprised. A man in gray, said Tim. What could she mean by that? Simon shook his head, baffled. There must be 100 men in gray, I know not. Ah, said Edward Farquhar, his broad face beaming. Perhaps I do. You do? Well, do not hide it, my friend. There's a man across the street named Harrelson. He is a cobbler by trade, but he always wears gray. There's no other citizen of Algeba for whom gray is constant apparel. That's it, then, Simon said, tucking the garlic and laurels into his backpack. Thank you, my good friend. Come, Tim, we must go find the man in gray. Sure enough, Simon Belmont found the man in gray just what Edward Farquhar had promised he would be, in his cobbler shop. However, the man, Richard Harrelson by name, was hardly as cooperative as Simon's friend in the anti-vampire shop had been. For one thing, he claimed he needed money for the crystal upgrade. Well, can't give away these things free, he said. A man's got to make a living, you know. And I reckon from the looks of you, I mean with those blonde locks and those muscles, I take you to be a hero and probably a wealthy man. So why should I let you take me for a fool, eh? Simon was aghast at this. I'm not a rich man by any means. I serve goodness and right. The man, a fellow with a weaselly narrow face and greasy hair pasted across his forehead, gave a sneaky smile. Ah, yes, but this nose. He touched his rat-like snout. This proboscis of mine smells coins, and these ears hear the jingle of coins, no? In truth, I do have a few coins in my pocket, and perhaps I can spare one for your trouble in this matter, but only one, I think. Tim got exasperated. Look, Simon, I'm going to leave you two to your bargaining. I'm just going to go around into the alley for a minute. Tim turned around and walked back into the street, leaving the duo to negotiate their deal. Actually, he was sort of half hoping that he'd run across some chocolate, or at least something sweet. But of course, there was no chocolate in Castlevania. No, strike that. There was chocolate in Castlevania, but now it was at the bottom of that fucking quicksand. Fucking place. He knew if he could just hang in there, he'd be triumphant with Simon. Hadn't his experience with video games taught him that? If you got beat, you started over. You kept trying. What was the word for it? Perseverance. That's right, he had to persevere. Still, all the same, he could sure do with a Hershey's kiss. Hello, came a voice from the darkness. Tim started. Oh, Sukavite, he's gonna have fucking diabetes by the time he's 20. Who's there? He demanded. He held out his torch and a solitary figure stepped into the light. It was a girl, a young girl about his age. She was cute, too, with dark eyes and dark hair and a smile that reminded Tim of Carol Jantz back home. Just me. My name is Melanie. You look like someone I can trust. I need someone that I can trust. Oh, well, my name's Tim. Actually, I'm Simon Belmont's assistant. We're taking a tour of the country, picking up this and that. For the good of Castlevania, you understand. Her eyes sparkled with good humor. Oh, you mean you're going to kick Dracula out so we can get some sunshine? Yeah, I guess you could say that, Melanie. Well, I'm all for that. I could use a little sunshine. You'll be my friend, won't you? Yeah, sure, why not? Here, would you take a piece of chocolate? Bells rang. Somewhere in Tim's mind, trumpets sounded. Chocolate. Did she say chocolate? Yeah, he said, reaching out. But just as he was about to take hold of the candy the girl was offering, something stopped him. What was a girl doing with this stuff? Wait a second, he said, not knowing whether or not to be suspicious, but pretty sure there was something rotten in Castlevania. Simon Belmont says there is no chocolate in Castlevania. I get it from a special place, Melanie said. Go ahead, take it. It's chocolate truffle. Godiva chocolate. Godivas, of course, were some of the very best chocolates there were. And suddenly Tim could almost smell the piece of chocolate. The scent of sweet ecstasy wandered under his nose. He could almost taste it. He felt an almost uncontrollable urge to reach out and grab that candy and cram it into his mouth. But he restrained himself. What's wrong? Asked Melanie. Don't you trust me? Also, sorry for the terrible Melanie voice. No, I don't trust you. This is just a trick, Dracula. Suddenly, Melanie's face began to distort and change. Her nose grew and fangs came out of her mouth. After a few seconds, her true identity was revealed. Melanie was really Dracula in disguise. Smiling, Dracula turned to Tim.
Stop interfering and head back to your own dimension. If you leave now, I'll give you all the chocolate you can eat.
No, said Tim.
What?
Said the vampire. Nah, said Tim, forcibly stopping himself. No, I'm not going back till we kick your sorry ass back to the dimension where it belongs. The result in the vampire was radical. At first, the fearsome face showed nothing. Then disbelief flickered to be replaced immediately by an explosion of hate and fury.
Impossible. Nobody resists the temptations of Dracula. Has it occurred to you, you little piece of rot, that because of this decision you may never, ever taste the extraordinary taste bud pleasures of chocolate again?
Tim cringed. That hadn't occurred to him. He wasn't sure if Dracula was bluffing, but even if he was, the young man intended to stick to his guns. I don't fucking care. Now just go away. You can't hurt me. You don't even have a body.
Little rodent. Very well. But I warn you, you shall regret this day for the rest of your life.
And so saying, Dracula disappeared in an explosion of color and fizzling fireworks and a stink like moldering leftovers forgotten too long in the refrigerator. Tim left in a hurry. It did not seem like a good idea to stay in this alley, no, not at all. Heading out, he ran directly into Simon Belmont. My gracious, you're in a hurry. You look like you've seen your own ghost. Tim held his tongue on the Dracula business. No reason to alarm his traveling companion unduly. This place is not the most confident spot in the universe. Did you get the stuff? Fucking asking, did you get the stuff like it's a fucking drug deal? Simon held up the crystal. It was no longer white. It flashed with the bluest blue that Tim had ever seen, the color of blue where the ocean meets the sky. It cost me more than I hoped it would, but I got what we need. Well, then what are we waiting for? Which way do we go? Simon smiled and looked down at the glowing blue with wonder. Come, my friend, I have the feeling that the light is shining on us now, and perhaps the way from here on out will be smooth. I don't know about that. Chapter 16. It's my immortal soul at stake, Timothy. It's like, you're no fucking fun. My soul is on the line. It really is fucking gonna stay with you, Boleros. That's gonna stay with me. Fucking... Some of these terrible puns are gonna stay. The slime of Dracula. It was the ugliest, most frightening creature that Tim Bradley had ever seen, and it was staring him right in the face. Actually, you know what's gonna fucking stay with me is Timothy fucking Bradley saying his full fucking name every time. I'm going to eat you, the thing said. Fucking straight up, I guess. I'm going to eat you, the thing said, and Tim believed it. Its mouth dominated its body and was plenty large enough to swallow both Tim and Simon Belmont in one crushing gulp. To make matters even worse, it had the worst case of halitosis that Tim had ever experienced. Its breath smelled like Tim's big brother's gym bag. It trembled before them now like a mound of mud and leaves, dripping and slobbering. The duo were in Belasco Marsh. Things had gone well, just as Simon predicted. They discovered Dracula's heart and Rover Mansion and added it to their collection, safely tucked away in Simon Belmont's bag. Then they'd added Dracula's brain. They'd also found directions to the next destination. Unfortunately, they had to go through Belasco Marsh to get there and landed in this spot of trouble. Said the creature, shivering. I can't switch that fast. Also, fucking, they get two of Dracula's body parts fucking off screen. Not even showing. We got the whole big fucking thing to get its rib, and then, oh yeah, and they got his heart and his brain. Fucking, you're not going to tell us how you did that? You just walked in, you said, here, give me the fucking Dracula brain. The creature, shivering and quaking like some mutant mound. Am Slimy Bar Sinister, and you are dead. Slimy Bar Sinister, are you fucking kidding me? The thing had simply risen up out of a large pool of fetid water just seconds ago. From the look of it, it meant business. Serious business. I'm afraid I'll have to take issues with that proclamation, said Simon. Taking a step back, he pulled out the chain whip and snapped it at the monster. The whip sliced through the thing called Slimy Bar Sinister with a loud snap. An eyeball rolled out of the mass and plopped right in front of Tim, staring up with alarm. Oh, said Slimy Bar Sinister. Why'd you do that? With a grunt, it slipped out a tentacle, grabbed a hold of the eye, and stuck it back into its face. We have every right to defend ourselves, said Tim. After all, we don't particularly want to be eaten. You don't? No, of course we don't. Don't be fucking stupid, said Simon. Now, if you don't dive back to where you're from, I intend to promptly send you back to your home dimension. The thing rolled its eyes thoughtfully. Count Dracula told me you would quite enjoy being eaten. I was rather looking forward to it myself, though I must admit I've never eaten a human before. The thing was truly huge, and Tim could see that whip and sword, or no whip and sword, he and Simon were not far from a trip down the thing's gullet. Oh, you wouldn't like it? Not at all. No? Why not? We taste like fish. Yum, I do like fish. Dead fish. The very best kind. Tim thought feverishly. Actually, we taste like chocolate. Tim winked desperately at Simon. Come on, old boy, understand this one. Slimy Bar Sinister wrinkled the appendage that Tim presumed to be its nose. Chocolate? What is that? Believe me, Slimy, said Simon with a face of such seriousness that only a hero of Simon's magnitude could conjure it up. You don't want to know what chocolate is. The statement and the clear sincerity with which it was spoken had a profound impact upon Slimy Bar Sinister. The creature, before a sickly green and chartreuse in color, abruptly turned shades of blue, red, and purple, his skin rippled like old pudding. Ugh. You see, Slimy, you want absolutely nothing to do with eating us. Dracula lied to you. We're totally indigestible. Tim stepped forward, bravely holding out a hand. Here you go. Have a lick if you want. Taste test. The creature quivered back like an amoeba. No, get away, you foul, disgusting creature, it said. Don't touch me. Ugh. You best watch out, thing, said Simon, waving his whip threateningly, else he will tell you a silly joke or worse, make a bad pun. That was simply too much for Slimy Boss Sinister. No, please, anything but that. Why'd the monster cross the road? Snapped Tim. Slimy Boss Sinister slunk back, holding out his tentacles to ward off his attackers. No, please. You must tell us where the next... Sorry. You must tell us where the next piece of Dracula is, commanded Simon. And while you're at it, why don't you tell us what the next piece of Dracula is? Why, it's Dracula's eyeball, of course, said Slimy Boss Sinister. And it's in Brahm's mansion, of course. Just take the lower path yonder. He pointed over a weed patch. Fucking what else can you tell us? Demanded Simon. You need not have feared me. I see you have laurels. Merely wear them beneath your undergarments, and no other creature of these woods can harm you. Sounds kinda itchy to me, but maybe it's worth it. Can I go now? Yes, of course you can go. Scoot, skedaddle, vamoose! The floppy creature took 3 wobbly steps and then jumped back into the sludge. So much for that, Joker, said Tim Bradley, brushing his hand symbolically. Yeah, true, said Simon. Why do I have the feeling that things might not go so well in the future? A shiver raced up Tim Bradley's spine. He somehow knew that Simon Belmont was right. Also, for being based on Castlevania, a fucking action game series, there's fucking no action here. They've killed 2 ghouls with a whip total. That's it. No fucking other fights, nothing. I get it's for kids, but fucking come on, it's Castlevania. If a kid's buying a book about fucking Castlevania, he wants whips. He wants hitting things with the axe. He wants throwing the holy fucking water to do more than break a fucking door. Chapter 17, Thanatos. Simon Belmont and Tim Bradley emerged from the 4th mansion, Simon holding his prize along with the other body parts in his canvas sack. Dracula's eyeball. Well, said Tim, feeling pretty good. Of the 4 parts we found so far, I guess Drac's brain doesn't add much weight to that sack. His cunning must be in his entire body, said Simon. You should not underestimate him, Tim. I'm sorry, this next line, I can't fucking believe it. It was then that Thanatos, the Master of Death, remember, showed up. Brahm's mansion had been much the same as Rova Mansion, which had also been quite like the other grand decaying houses holding the body parts of Dracula. Right up to the skeletons in the dungeon. Wow, they're calling the game out here for reusing environments, which is a very legitimate criticism of Castlevania 2. Oh well, it also made things a little simpler. Not that they hadn't gotten their share of monsters and creepy crawlies, to say nothing of shivers. However, for some reason Dracula had been leaving Simon pretty much alone. And now that Tim seemed to have kicked the chocolate habit, he felt much better about things. In fact, about this whole business. He was starting to think that this was going to be a very positive experience after all. That was until the Master of Death showed up. Thanatos erupted out of thin air right in front of the path to the forest like a bolt of lightning in the middle of a thunderstorm. When Tim's eyes recovered from the blast of sizzling white light, he opened them and saw the thing standing in front of them. Heaven help us, said Simon Belmont, flinging his whip back into readiness, as though that would help. From the size of the guy, it looked as though it was going to take more than just a whip, even if it was a magical chain whip, to deal with him. Tim Bradley could not speak, let alone come up with a cute quip. This Joker was absolutely incredible. I am Thanatos, Master of Death, said the big guy. Look on me and despair. He seemed to be about 20 feet tall, with legs like the trunks of trees, arms with biceps that would make Arnold Schwarzenegger gasp with envy, and a chest as thick as a Sherman tank. But it was as much his outfit as his size that made Tim freak out almost totally. Thanatos looked like a hood straight out of Flatbush, Brooklyn in the 1950s who had made a time stop in the current heavy metal era for some jewelry. He wore black leather pants with a black shirt littered with chains and spangles and other cheap jewelry. He wore the classic black leather motorcycle jacket. On his wrists were leather bracelets with studs. His face was like a cross between something out of a 50s horror movie and someone out of a 40s gangster film. His entire face was broad. His hair was cut flat top style. There was a ring in his nose, making him look much like a bull who'd stepped off a motorcycle after a high-speed dust-up with the cops. You I shall toss back to your home dimension, Thanatos said to Tim Bradley, gesturing with a hand the size of Tim's room. So what the fuck is this guy? And you, Simon Belmont. He lifted his boots so high that Tim could see the hobnails on the bottom. You I shall crush! Simon Belmont looked unfazed at this threat. Tim guessed that was one of the nice things about being a hero. He didn't get too upset when big guys threatened you. He just took it all in stride and figured this was just the next part of your mission or quest or duty. Tim, on the other hand, did not consider himself a hero. Tim considered himself a 14-year-old who had stumbled into something he didn't really want to be in, but who had decided it was best for all involved that he see the whole thing through to the end. Now, however, he wasn't so sure. All the other parts of this journey had been scary and frightening, sure, but they'd been fun compared to this guy. This guy really and truly meant business. And when he killed someone, that person was dead with a capital D. Who knew? Maybe worse than dead. The thing started to advance, pounding forward like a Japanese horror movie made real. The spangles and jewelry flashed with an infernal light of their own. The smell of the thing advanced before it, a wave of seaweed and dead jellyfish. The very air began to crackle with energy. Simon Belmont cracked his whip, but it snapped against some kind of force field. The tip exploded in a shower of sparks. Fear gripped Tim Bradley. Felt as though the courage was seeping through the bottoms of his feet. He had the almost uncontrollable urge to turn and run as hard as he could. Simon Belmont flipped the whip back again. His face was resolute, sure of victory. He hurled the whip, and then the impossible happened. Thanatos, Master of Death, reached out with one of his hands, and he reached so quickly Tim could barely see him move. The hand shot out, wrapped around Simon's body, and pulled him forward toward his face. The mouth opened, and Tim had a glimpse beyond jagged fangs and rotting molars. A glimpse of stars and nebula, shadows between planets and worlds being born and worlds dying. The hand pulled Simon Belmont toward his death. Okay, that's pretty fucking metal. Finally, something fucking cool happens. Almost unable to stop himself, Tim turned to run. He had to get out, he had to get away, had to... But then he stopped. He forcibly called himself to a stop, got a grip on that fear that had grabbed him with every bit as much force as the Master of Death had used to grab Simon. No, he was bigger than his fear. Besides, hadn't Thanatos said something? Something very important, something very telling. Stop right there, called Tim Bradley. Don't you fucking dare eat that hero. He said it with such authority and such loudness that Thanatos did stop. He held Simon Belmont dangling just inches from the chasm of nothingness, and his eyes rolled like bloodshot marbles toward Tim Bradley, looking down as a cook might on some troublesome mouse squeaking for cheese in the pantry. Who dares challenge Thanatos, Master of Death? The great leather being demanded. Look, you jerk, we know your name by now. Oh, that's fucking rich from you, Tim fucking Bradley, saying your name every fucking chance. Tim took out his whip. He didn't really know how to use it, but he sure could try to fake it. How dare you speak to me like that, mortal? Look, I may be mortal, but I can thrash you any day, you third-rate creature feature. The Master of Death began to turn a bright purple. Steam spumed from his ears. He dropped the half-conscious Simon Belmont to the ground and started stomping toward Tim, lightning bolts and firecrackers exploding from his bulging eyes. You're worse than dead, buddy boy. Oh, no, I'm not. Tim hurled the whip with all his might, snap it just like Simon Belmont taught him. And lo and behold, the whip cracked. And it cracked like the voice of doom. Thanatos stopped in his tracks. He looked down at Tim much in the way a crocodile in combat boots might look at a snail it's about to step on who's just lifted up and displayed an atomic bomb is about to detonate. Who are you? Timothy Bradley, said Tim, and who, pray tell, are you? I am. Thanatos shook his head, confused. I have already told you who I am, Timothy Bradley. What do you use for a head, a pumpkin? Tim snapped the whip again. The sound was louder. It was as though something deep and wonderful inside had taken control of his arm. You know, right at FX9, you got a good con going here. You just fucking write Timothy Bradley, every fucking time you can to make that quota. I respect the hustle, kid. Fucking ace. The sound was louder. It was as though something deep and wonderful inside him had taken control of his arm. The creature actually stepped back, looking perplexed. Meanwhile, off to the right, Thanatos did not notice that Simon Belmont was recovering. Simon was slowly getting to his feet, looking around him dizzily. Tim knew he had to distract the thing's attention. He had to let Simon get another chance at it. I've got a computer for a brain, you stupid pile of buttons, cried Tim. I'm a lot smarter than you. You're an arrogant piece of earwax, Timothy Bradley. Angry smoke spumed from the thing's armpits. I shall have to kill you now. But you can't kill me. You said so yourself. You can only send me back to my home dimension. The monster was taken aback. His mouth hung open.
I was being merciful, you brat. I can do what I like.
Oh, yeah? Tim snapped his whip again. Well, come and get me, cucumber breath. The thing snarled like a million cats fighting. It stepped forward. Tim stepped forward to meet it and flung the whip again. Death, here is thy sting. And again. The video game master's reflexes had been honed to perfection. He could actually do this now. He could use the whip. And here's the proof. For he had just flicked the whip so expertly, it had caught Thanatos directly on the tip of his big nose. Ow! Where the whip had landed was a red welt that immediately spread through the nose. It swelled up hugely, almost obscuring the creature's bowling ball eyes. Stand back, fucker, said Tim, raging against the knight, raging against the master at death, screaming at the top of his lungs. And while you're doing that, why don't you just get back where you belong and never come back here again?
What?
Blustered Thanatos.
You wound me and then you order me about? You shall pay dearly, mortal.
From the corner of his eye, Tim could see that Simon was getting up. He was reaching into his pocket for something. Tim had to keep the creature's attention diverted. So far, all I've gotten is more and more blasts of hot air, Thanatos. Come on, show me what you can do, you loser. Quaking with fury, the monster charged Tim. However, Simon Belmont leaped into action. Literally. He jumped on the creature's back, flinging the whip around its neck. Then he jammed one eye with a blue crystal and the other with a batch of garlic, blinding the monster. Thanatos howled with vexation and fury. Strike him in the chest, Tim! Strike him in the chest! Tim ran up and hit Thanatos in the chest with a clenched fist. No, said Simon, fighting for all he was worth to stay on the creature, who was bucking like a Brahmin bull. With a thorn whip! With a thorn whip, Tim! You enjoy that, Elliot? I thought it would be fun spiced up a bit. Tim stepped back, aimed, and let go. The biggest snap of all. Thanatos gave one more mighty heave, tossing Simon Belmont off once more. However, he did not look as though he were about to charge Tim any longer. In fact, the Master of Death looked like he was very ill or about to explode, or perhaps both. His edges turned to shimmering flames and he shook like a leaf. His clothing turned almost translucent and began to crack. I do believe that Thanatos needs a little more assistance to negotiate his way back where he belongs. Simon pulled his flask of holy water out and tossed it on the vibrating monster. It was like tossing gasoline on flames. Thanatos whirled like an exploding star, and then with a final snarl, he collapsed into nothingness as though sucked away by a black hole. Wow, said Tim. What a sight. Wicked pisser. Simon Belmont took a deep breath and put away first the flask and then the crystal. Then he looked at Tim with renewed respect and maybe awe. Do you realize who that was? He said. Fuck, do I have to say the name again? Thanatos, Master of Death. Yeah, but do you have any idea what that monster could have done to you? Tim made a motion of dismissal with his hand. No, he was as full of hot air as Dracula. Simon shook his head solemnly. You were really in big trouble, Tim. Your bravery is astounding. Tim blinked. You meant I really could have, died? Simon said, in a word, yes. Tim Bradley fainted dead away. Chapter 18. The Final Confrontation, Part 1. We've got 30 pages left. Fuck it, let's finish it. Hours later, after Tim had recovered from his faint, after other adventurers and other creatures, after a great deal of whip work, for he could now wield a whip in reality as well as he could on a game machine, after recovering the final body part of Dracula, a foot as it turned out, both Tim Bradley and Simon Belmont were very, very tired. So it was no surprise at all to Tim Bradley when Simon Belmont sat down near a tree stump near the town of Alder and said, I am so tired, Timothy Bradley, we must rest for a while. Now Tim was fatigued as well. After all, you can't go through close to 2 days of monsters, vampires, and the Master of Death without feeling a certain amount of weariness. They were in the town of Adler now. It was dark and cold, and all the colors of night pressed in on them as they sat in a small park beneath some trees. There were no lights in any houses, nor were there any taverns to welcome with warmth and song. All was dead quiet. Or was the right term quietly dead? Tim Bradley did not care to find out. I don't know, Simon. Maybe we'd better press on and get this over with. Nah, said Simon. I must rest. Give me just 10-15 minutes. Let me refresh myself, then we can be on our way. Okay, but maybe I'd better just stay awake and keep watch. So give me 1 sec, I gotta take a sip of my tea. Yes, that would be a good idea. Your good friend, Timothy Bradley. I could not have come so far without you. The way you dealt with the Master of Death, the way you left those mystical blocks, and especially without your help, we would have not been able to get that boat across the river and procure this magical diamond. Simon held up the gem. It sparkled in the light of their torch. Also, you're telling me they did all this cool adventure shit and you didn't fucking give us that part of the goddamn book? Are you fucking kidding me? You had us talking to a weird Freddy in the fucking basement of one of the... And then you describe all this other shit? Are you fucking kidding me? Well, we got a ways to go, haven't we? Now you rest, Simon, if that's what you gotta do. I'll sit up and watch. Yeah, budget wouldn't cover it. Simon Belmont was already sleeping, snoring gently. Tim looked upon the face of the hero in the torchlight and saw how it had aged in this past day and a half. He was glad he didn't have a mirror. He didn't want to look at his own face. He'd always wanted to grow up. He didn't want to grow up that fast. Still, he'd matured. There's no question about that. He'd learned lessons about life and himself he'd never forget. That was if he ever got back home. How he longed for the familiarity of his room, his comic books, the grumbles of his parents, liver and onions once a week for supper. He even wished he was back in that bathroom at his junior high waiting to confront Bert. Bert was absolutely nothing compared to what he'd faced in the last 2 days. So he's just sitting there, shivering a bit, trying to warm his hands with the flame from the torch when the most trying time of the whole journey hit. It came on slowly and subtly. Quite simply, Simon Belmont woke up. Simon, that was fast. Tim hopped to his feet, wanting to get out of this dark and depressing place. Let's go. Simon said nothing. He just looked at Tim with dark and brooding eyes. Simon, you okay, pal? Simon remained mute. He looked around and smiled, the most devilish, evil smile that Tim Bradley had ever seen.
There is no Simon here, brat. This body is all mine now.
Simon, not Simon, opened his mouth wider, revealing the sharpest, deadliest pair of fangs Tim Bradley had ever seen.
And now, if you would so kindly bare your neck, I am very, very thirsty.
And with that, Dracula leapt upon Tim Bradley. Now, Tim Bradley had seen many vampire films. He'd seen the likes of Bela Lugosi, Christopher Lee, and many other actors portraying Dracula, and other evil creatures of the night whose profession was the oral removal of blood from the veins of human victims. He'd seen plenty of cinematic vampires leaping on people, but actually experiencing it was quite different. For one thing, as strong as Simon Belmont was in real life, possessed by the spirit of Dracula, he seemed to have the strength of 10 madmen. He grabbed Tim and threw him across the clearing, almost hitting a tree. Tim staggered to his feet, grabbing at his side for his whip. The initial attack had been so fierce, so violent, and above all so quick, Tim had not even had the chance to pull out his whip and defend himself. Now that he knew how to use it, he might as well. He snapped it. But with lightning speed, Dracula Simon grabbed it and pulled it out of his hands.
No help there, mortal.
The agate eyes gleamed a horrible, enthusiastic fire. Tim reached down to his belt to get whatever else he might have that'd be a help. He came up holding something hard and round. Ah, bulb of garlic. That should do the trick. Get back, I say, he cried, brandishing the garlic.
Yum,
said Dracula Simon. He grabbed the garlic and popped it in his mouth, crunching it up through a big fat grin.
My favorite.
Yikes, said Tim. I thought that vampires were supposed to hate garlic.
I absolutely loathe the stuff. In fact, I dare say my body parts in the bag are trembling with disgust. But you see, I'm in Simon Belmont's body, so it really doesn't affect me. I don't suppose you'd have another bulb, would you? I could just breathe on you and you'll die.
Dracula Simon bent his head back and an absolutely hideous laugh escaped.
Ooh,
he exclaimed.
I'm going to have such fun with you, little puny man.
And he jumped again. This time Tim was ready for him. He leapt away, and the vampire charged past him, banging hard into a tree. The vampire fell onto the ground. The experience did not faze him, however. He hopped right back to his feet and charged again, faster than before. This time his claws caught hold of Tim's coat. He pulled the teenager up to his face. It's incredible, Hanabi.
Just a few pints,
he said, drool splashing down onto his collar.
That's all I need.
What's black and white and red all over? Dracula Simon blinked. A newspaper, yelled Tim. Dracula Simon did not make any expression. But then suddenly the eyes were no longer flaring red. They turned to pale blue once more, and Simon Belmont, the true Simon Belmont, peered out. "Simon!" cried Tim. "Simon, you're still in there! Fight him, man, fight him!" Said Simon. "I'm fighting!" But that was all the hero could get out before his features bent once more and Dracula's fire smoldered in his eye.
"A poor attempt,"
said Dracula.
"Besides, you fool, your stupid joke reserve is clearly running out. Even I in Little Castlevania have heard that joke before."
The fangs came in closer, and Tim could feel the hot breath of the monster who'd taken over his friend. This was it, he thought. He's got me. But then, just as Dracula's fangs were about to sink into the tender flesh of Tim Bradley, a most fortunate thing suddenly happened. The first ray of dawn filtered through a break in the trees and touched Dracula Simon's face. The vampire screamed. "Simon! Simon, fight him now!" cried Tim. "Fight him!" Tim could see the struggle going on in his friend's face. Tim wrested himself from the clutch on Tim and hurled himself onto the ground. "The holy water, Tim!" he said in a strangled cry. "Use the holy water!" Yeah, of course, the holy water. He should have thought of that before. But then he realized why he hadn't. He didn't know where it fucking was. "In my bag, Tim!" cried Simon. "Hurry, there's just enough left!" Tim started for the bag, but then found himself tripping and tumbling to the ground. He looked around to see that Simon Dracula had caught his pant leg and was trying to pull him back, even as the terrible struggle continued inside of Simon Belmont's body. "No, you don't," said Tim. Angrily, he kicked him in the face, but Dracula hung on. Tim had to use all his might to drag himself and his burden to where Simon's bag sat. He grabbed it and rummaged around. "The flask! Where's the flask of holy water?" Dracula Simon clawed his way up Tim's pant leg, ripping and tearing along the way. Tim's hand grabbed something solid. Without waiting to unstop of the flask or even to check that it was a flask, Tim bashed his attacker across the noggin. Liquid splashed out on him. Simon Dracula screeched. He writhed and squirmed. But then he rolled onto a shaft of light from the newborn sun. Tim could see the spirit of Dracula evaporate from Simon's body like black dew. Simon stood, dripping water and smiling. "Thanks," he said. "I needed that." "Well, welcome on in, Raiders. What were you up to?" Also, I've got to apologize really quickly. I am, as a punishment for losing a bet, having to do pretty much all of this stream in a bad Boston accent. I apologize. Luigi's Mansion. Fucking welcome on in, Raiders. Gonna do my best to stay in the Boston accent as I finish up. We are reading Worlds of Power, which is a video game novelization of, yeah, it sure is, Dasmal Germ. We are finishing up the Worlds of Power Simon's Quest novelization in the early 90s, only because I lost a bet. I lost a race, in fact, Xanadu. I gotta fucking read this whole thing in a Boston accent. Or at least try to. We're almost done. Chapter 19. Sturgoy Cemetery. You think he's dead? Simon shook his head emphatically. No. I don't know, when I threw that holy water on him, he looked like he was all shriveled. Look! Tim gestured all around him. I mean, it's already lighter. I mean, before it was dark. All over, even dark during the day. Surely that means Dracula's been defeated. Nah, Simon held up the bag. Until these parts are reassembled, until I confront Dracula again. In the flesh, and once more defeat him, and this time burn his body and thus send him back to the dimension of monsters from which he's from, my beloved Castlevania will not be free of the dreaded curse of Dracula. Well, you seem pretty sure about it, don't you? Tim shrugged. Come this far, I guess I can go the distance. As a good lad. Simon Belmont was smiling. After all they'd been through, there was a grin on his face. You seem happy, Simon. And thank you for the raid. I do appreciate it. No, not happy, Timothy Bradley. I shall never be happy until Dracula's been banished from this land and Linda Entwistle is again by my side. Simon shook his head and clamped a brotherly hand on his assistant's shoulder. It is you that I am happy with, my friend. You have renewed my faith not only in fortune, but in the human spirit. Tim could think of nothing smart to say to this. Actually, to tell the truth, he was moved more than he could say. He looked up at Simon. I have a confession to make, Simon. Oh? Some little mistake of your youth? I am not the strong-willed person that you think I am. I never said you were strong-willed, Timothy Bradley, merely a good person. While my weaknesses almost betrayed us both. He told about his experience with Dracula in the alley. Simon listened carefully and patiently, and then he nodded. I suspected as much. You did? Why? I didn't see you sneaking any of that chocolate candy of yours. I figured you must have lost it somehow. I assumed Dracula would tempt you. Why didn't you say something? There are certain matters, Tim Bradley, that an individual can only take care of himself. However, be assured that if I had ever thought you would not have been able to deal with the temptations of Dracula, I would have come to your support immediately with all of my available powers. Timothy Bradley, there's gonna be a fuck named Timothy Bradley in your fucking nightmares tonight, Hanabi. You better fucking believe it. Simon put a reassuring friend on his friend's shoulder. You must realize by now that none of us can make it through this alone, Timothy Bradley. We all need each other's help. Oh yeah, said Tim, grinning. What about my video games? I do those all on my own. But did I not see a few how to score more points videotapes on your shelf? Tim blushed. Well, as a great poet once said, no man is an island, said Simon with a wry expression. Well, if that's the truth, Simon, you must be a whole fucking continent. Simon laughed good-naturedly. And you a whole world unto yourself, Timothy Bradley. And a very warped, twisted, fun world at that. Thanks, I'll take that as a compliment. A little embarrassed, he looked around him, only realizing now exactly where they had come. It's a cemetery, Tim exclaimed. But not just any cemetery, Simon assured him. Storygoi Cemetery. Storygoi Cemetery, said Tim. What does that mean? Look around you, Timothy Bradley, and you shall surely see. Timothy Bradley doesn't feel like real words to me anymore. It's absolutely insane. At first glance, it looked much like an old-fashioned cemetery. Tim shivered. It was all like a scene out of that movie Beetlejuice, only far more real and far scarier. He has not only run out of silly jokes and puns, he didn't feel like using them anyway. This neither seemed the time nor place. What are you talking about? Tim asked, looking a little bit baffled. Look closer. Look at one of the graves. Tim shrugged and peered closer at one of the closest graves. Here lie the moldering remains of Jacob Varley, it said. So? I still don't see anything Sudden, hands sprouted from the sides of the gravestone and grabbed Timothy Bradley by the shirt. A mouth formed in the gravestone. The hands pulled Tim closer. Yikes! Simon said, Don't worry, Tim, it won't harm you. The gravestone said, Hey, kid.
Hey, kid. Boy, do I have a story to tell you. You want to hear how he died? Or shall I start from the beginning?
The mouth flapped a large red tongue as it talked.
Okay, I was born in the year of the plum pudding on Notto Street. That's right to the left of the park, you know? So then...
Tim pulled himself away from the clutching hands.
Hey, wait, said the grave. I haven't finished my story. Boy, is it a good one. Just give me a couple of minutes of your time. I swear you won't be sorry. It's a super tale.
Maybe later. Tim looked at Simon. I suppose you're about to tell me that every stone tells a story. Simon nodded. Gravely. They both laughed. Simon nodded gravely in the cemetery while talking gravestones. They both laughed.
Hey,
called the next nearest gravestone, leaning forward insistently.
Don't listen to Jacob. All he did all his life was work in a shop. Me, I was an adventurer. I was also in the army. Boy, do I have some great stories to tell.
His name is FX9 Sukavat, which is not even pretending to not be a pen name. Actually, said Simon Belmont, what we need now is some help. Some directions. We got Dracula's body parts here, but I've got to take him someplace special to assemble him and fight Dracula in person so I can remove Castlevania's curse, to say nothing of my own. Ah, said another bigger gravestone with a bigger mouth. These guys are really boring. Listen to my story, and then we'll tell you what you're going to have to do. I'm afraid we don't really have time, said Tim. We've got until sundown tonight to do this, and although it's still kind of cloudy up there, it's well past noon. Plenty of time, said the Jacob grave. Maybe I did have a boring life, but I'll tell you, the people who came into my shop brought some wonderful stories. Like the sailor who'd just taken a trip with none other than Peg-Nose the Pirate. Now there's a story. No, really, insisted Simon. We do need to get out of here and on our way. No, you don't. Listen to my story. No, listen to my story. I've got tall tales to beat the band. The clamor in the cemetery was so noisy that Tim had to put his hands over his ears. Oh dear, said Simon Belmont. It looks as though I'm going to have to use the secret weapon here. He held up the garlic necklace. Immediately there was silence. Ugh, P.U. garlic. Put it away. Get that junk out of here. Simon waved the garlic, blowing the fumes out toward the assembled gravestones. I will, but only if you cooperate with us. Okay, put those stink balls away. We'll tell you what you want to know. Just get rid of that stuff. Simon slipped the garlic back under his cloak. Okay, then, gravestones, what do you have to say for yourselves? The gravestones told him to take the top path through the woods. Tim and Simon did so. Gravestones told him that this top path would take him to the town of Andal. Sure enough, the path did just that. The talking gravestones told him to buy a morning star in Andal.
Tim had thought they meant to actually purchase a planetary object. Simon explained patiently that a morning star was a weapon, a heavy stick with a barbed ball at the end. Sure enough, they found a member of the resistance movement against Dracula who supplied them with the needed weapon. The final part of the mission was not as easy to understand. "Tell me again," said Tim. "I'm not sure I heard those weird gravestones right." "Oh, you heard correctly," said Simon. "Next we have to catch a ride on a tornado." Tim sighed. "I was afraid that was what they said." And they headed away from the town of Andol toward their final appointment with Dracula. All right, Deborah Cliff. Wow, this is literally straight out of the game. You go kneel at the cliff and get whisked away by a tornado. All of the things they had collected lay in a pile on the ground by the edge of the cliff, except for the pieces of Dracula. Those were still in the sack slung over Simon's shoulder. They would not part with it. They were out in the open now, beneath a darkening sky. The clouds whirled around them as though the weather itself was aware of the importance of what was about to happen. This is too much. Tim had absolutely no idea what would happen next. All he could do was just stick with Simon Belmont and trust in him. They had been guided to the very edge of Castlevania, to that dark place known as Deborah Cliff where one dimension jutted into the next. There was a smell of the sea here, and a massive mountain range rose along the horizon until it merged into the pure black of the stuff between universes. What the fuck? Lightning lashed to the distant nameless sea, and thunder crashed. Simon Belmont prepared himself. He carefully held the crystal that Linda Entwistle had guided them to. It was red now, sparkled and glowed. "Here it is, Linda," said Simon. "The power you invested in me, the faith and love you gave me, here it is. I give it back. I give it back to Castlevania. I open up everything to the powers of good in all the universe. Please, send us now to the place where I can do my final battle with Dracula." Nothing happened. Indeed, the crystal seemed to sparkle somewhat less. The waves stopped crashing, the wind stopped blowing, thunder and lightning stopped. All was still. Ominously still. "What's happening?" asked Tim, unable to take the suspense anymore. "Shh, can't you hear it?" "Hear what? I can't hear anything." "Hello, Tachikuro. I apologize. I'm in the fucking middle of using a bad Boston accent reading this whole fucking shitty novelization of Castlevania 2. Tim listened harder, and this time he did indeed hear something. It came down from the north like the howl of a lonely wolf, and even as he listened the sound grew louder, a sweeping yowling sound. Then he saw it. It was a white cone whirling on its end, snarling and growling with a power Tim had never even imagined before, much less witnessed a tornado. It was coming straight for him. Tim's first instinct was to run just as fast as he could. This was, in its way, far more terrifying than anything supernatural he'd seen in the past 2 days. This was raw elemental power that could pick him up and smash him against a rock like a giant might crush a fly against a wall. Simon grabbed him by the arm. "No, Tim, it is frightening, I know. Terribly frightening." His long blonde hair was whirling with the harsh whip of the wind, and he had to yell to make himself heard above the din. But have faith. Trust. Tim stopped himself. He'd come this far. Now he had to do something that was the most terrifying thing he'd done yet, which was to do nothing. He had to trust. He had to stay still and just surrender himself to something far greater than he was. He had to trust the powers of good. Ultimately, that was what he had fought for against all this time. That was what had fought through him against the darkness of Dracula. And knowing that, Tim Bradley realized that there was both good and bad in himself, in everyone. But it was the ultimate responsibility of all people to allow good to work through them to the benefit of all. Hazmat, how you fucking doing, kid? Welcome in, Raiders. For anybody who doesn't know, my name's Professor Bloom. I am a teacher. I do lots of singing. I organize a VTuber choir. I play lots of retro games. Tonight I'm fucking reading Castlevania 2 Worlds of Power novel from 1990 in a terrible Boston accent because I lost a fucking bet. Doing pretty fucking good. That's what I like to hear, kid. What were you doing for music? Hey, thank you for the follow, Abigail Crockham. What are you up to? Are you playing some fucking mandolin? Being a regular Rod Stewart over there. We're close to the end. We're near the final battle with Dracula now, so sit back, relax, enjoy. And soon I'll be able to stop doing this fucking accent. A lot of my family's from the Boston area, but I am not, so I'm just trying to imitate my cousins and feel like a piece of shit doing it. So let's fucking go. Mischief Makers, fuck yeah. Shake, shake. That's the good shit. Still, he was scared. Simon Belmont could clearly see that. Also, this whole fucking story is a fucking isekai. You're some kid named Timothy Bradley, and you get whisked away to Castlevania to help Simon Belmont because you're so fucking good at the video game, and you're addicted to fucking chocolate. The story's a shit show. It's a terrible, terrible book. It's really funny. Look it up. Take my hand, Timothy Bradley, the hero said. Take my hand, and together we shall face this final challenge. Victory is but a leap of faith away. Tim nodded. He reached out, but a gust of wind grabbed him and pulled him away. Tim, cried Simon, take my hand. Take it so we will not be separated. Tim struggled against the wind. It was gale force by now, 100 miles an hour. But somewhere deep down inside him there roared up the power he needed. He struggled. He put all his heart and soul into that struggle, and he grabbed out for Simon Belmont's hand. A course of power seemed to flash through Simon's hand to his, and he took that power and used it to pull himself closer to his friend. Hold on, Tim, hold on, here it comes. Tim looked up and he could see the tornado bend over like a crazy slinky toy. His first thought was to close his eyes to just get away from this terrible thing, but he made himself stop. Nah, he'd face it. If this was his death coming down to him, then he would face it. He would face it with his friend. The tornado dipped down and picked him up like toys and flung him into its throat. Tim Bradley lost consciousness. Also, you get fucking hints for the game, but they're upside down. Some bullshit. Chapter 21, The Castle Tower. We only got 12 pages left in this fucking book. They better end this shit. When he woke up at first, he did not know where he was. He was lying on something hard. That much he knew. It was hard as stone, and it was cold. In fact, as he turned over and reached out, he could see that, in fact, it was stone. Tim groaned and looked up. Above him, the sky swirled harsh and mean, basically black with an overtinge of red. They are, Hazmat. The air was charged with electricity. There was the feeling of danger. Oh, hold on. Whip sound effect. Simon's whip. Tim looked around. Sure enough, there he was, looking incredibly big, powerful Simon Belmont, hero of Castlevania. Simon cracked the whip again. Clearly, he was just practicing for the confrontation with Dracula. Tim, he said, you're awake. Yeah, but how? Where? I let you sleep. You needed the rest. We still have a half hour to go before sunset. I needed to prepare before I engaged Dracula. Loosen my muscles, prepare my spirit. He cracked the whip again. Tim looked around to get his bearings. They were on the top of a castle tower. Tim could see the yard below. The farther spires were cloaked in a fine ghostly mist. Flags fluttered in a slight breeze. It's just like my dream. Simon looked up from his work with his whip. Dream? Yeah, just before you came for me that very morning I had a dream I would be here on top of a tower very much like this. You walked to the parapet, touched the stone. I guess you'd call that a premonition, wouldn't you? Simon grunted. He snapped his whip again. Then again, perhaps your heart has always been in Castlevania. I know my parents say my brain is trapped in Nintendo Land, but I don't know about my heart. This is ridiculous. Oh, hold on, I need a sip of my tea. This is a place of the heart, Timothy Bradley. It's a place of the spirit. He went to a bag in the middle of the circle that was on top of the tower. Yeah, maybe the real Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest was the friends we made along the way. Hanabi, just you wait till the fucking ending, because that's basically it. You're gonna fucking die. You're going to feel cheated of the 3 hours that you just spent hearing this story. I did read the ending ahead of time. It's a place of the heart, Timothy Bradley. It's a place of the spirit. He went to a bag in the middle of the circle that was on top of the tower. But now we must deal with more physical realities. He opened the bag, and from it he drew the 5 pieces of Dracula's body. These he placed in a pile. Then he drew out a wooden stake. Oh, it's a very good thing, Pinky. The VOD will be up after the stream. He drew out a wooden stake which he had purchased in Andal. Finally, he pulled out a jar of oil and some matches. This time, Simon Belmont intended to do the job properly. Stand back, Tim Bradley. I am about to utter the spell given to me by Linder. The spell to bring back Dracula's spirit back into his body. Simon nodded grimly. Are you prepared? Is your heart at peace with your maker? We may well die here on this tower. We may have died during the trip. Yeah, but the danger's greatest here. It's for good reason that only a tornado can bring you to the top of Castlevania's Death Castle. It is a dreaded and terrible place, a place only the bravest may tread, for it's here that one faces that which he fears the most. And what is that for you, Simon? I fear Dracula the most. Why do you think I stalk him so? He shuddered and closed his eyes. I've feared Dracula since I was a little boy. I was not born a hero, Timothy Bradley, but I have faced my fears. He who confronts his deepest dreads every day, that person's a hero. Simon stood farther away. So come, hero. Stand beside me as I chant these words. Join me as I make my final stand against Dracula. So I'm totally losing the accent now. Give me a sec. Oh. I find I can't really speak Korean with anything but my actually the Korean I speak sounds slightly hick-like because I lived in a countryside area, so people from Seoul make fun of it. Not really make fun of it, but you know. They can tell where I lived. Tim walked up to Simon. I am proud to do so, Simon. I'm proud to be a friend. Tell me, Timothy Bradley, what's your greatest fucking fear now? What do you have to confront? Tim frowned. Afraid I shall not be a good enough fighter. Oh, I'm losing it. I'm so done here. You're not, Tim. It makes no difference. In this place, it's not the skill with which one wields a weapon. It's the spirit and the willpower behind the hero. And these, good friend, you do not lack. He turned and faced the file of Dracula's pots and began to intone the chant. By all that is good and all that is bad, bring back Dracula to this place of the sad. Oh my god. I can't with that line. I can't fucking say that. Fucking. By all that is good and all that is bad, bring back Dracula to the place of the sad. Conjure up his spirit from the air and fill up his body right there. Simon flung his whip end over the body pots. The effect was immediate and astonishing. A bolt of lightning blasted down and struck the pile of Dracula's parts with a mighty explosion. White smoke billowed around it like a shroud. When it cleared, there stood the evil count himself, Dracula. But he was not cowering, nor did he look at all afraid, for he had his arm around a beautiful woman, holding her as a man might hold a shield. It was Linda Entwistle. Chapter 22, The Final Confrontation, Part 2. Although Tim had seen the face of Dracula before, he had never seen Dracula in his full physical glory, and the sight was imposing indeed. Somehow the parts of the Count had come together and woven themselves into a creature that glowed with good health. Count Dracula stood well over 6 feet tall. He looked like a bodybuilder who'd used human blood as his after-workout cocktail. His eyes blazed red and his cape shone with pure blackness, spread out behind him like the wings of a bat. Tim found himself incapable of coming up with any jokes or puns. In the presence of Dracula, it was difficult to imagine a world with anything funny in it at all. "Linda!" cried Simon. "Linda, get it away from him!" "She can't." Oh wait, I forgot my Dracula voice.
"She can't,"
said Dracula, eyes flaring. "Dracula," said Simon, "I have fought against you all my life. I have to finish that right now."
"Oh dear, I was afraid you'd say that. Well then I'm afraid that if you make even one little step toward me, then I'll have to end this young lady's life. And you wouldn't want that, would you?"
Thank you for the clips. Simon lowered his whip. "Simon, don't!" called Tim. "All of Castlevania's at stake." Stake! That reminded Tim. The stake was still on the ground. If he could just pick it up, if he could just sneak around. I must surrender. There were tears in Simon's eyes. I cannot stand here and watch her die. I love you, Linda. I love you more than my own life.
"That's right, Simon. Do think of priorities,"
snarled Dracula.
"So then, do we make a deal? Or are negotiations still in order?"
While Dracula was busy speechifying, Tim was busy sneakifying. Without attracting the vampire's attention, the teenager stepped over to the stake, picked it up, and began to creep up on Dracula from behind. "There's nothing more to talk about," said Simon. "You must leave Castlevania."
"What? Banished from my kingdom?"
"Nah, simply just get the fuck out of here, kid." Dracula chuckled sourly.
"Thanatos would boil boil me alive should I return to the dimension of monsters.
I can go somewhere else then.
What? Earth? I don't fare very well there. Not well at all. That is why I came to Castlevania. It's much more hospitable here. Why should I leave?
Because, said Tim, you're such a fucking jerk, kid. And he ran with all his might toward Dracula. The Count turned and hissed, but the charge did catch him off guard, and he could not hang on to his captive, Linda Entwistle, long dress and tresses fluttering, broke away and ran. Tim pushed the stake towards Dracula's heart, but the vampire was too quick. He caught the wood in his powerful hand at the last moment, and he wrenched it away from the boy as easily as a diner might wield a toothpick. He tossed the stake over the side of the tower.
Bah! Foolish mortal. You think that a stake will stop me?
He advanced toward Tim, claws outstretched. Simon hurled the Morning Star. It snapped on Dracula's arm, and the Count flinched, but he did not stop his advance. He grabbed Tim Bradley by the front of his shirt, and he pulled him up so close that Tim could see the little grooves on the side of the vampire's fangs.
I will deal with you later, Belmont. First, though, I wish to pat back a smaller debt.
Tim felt fucking helpless in such a powerful grip. But Dracula held him in such a way that Tim could reach into his own back pocket. And he did just that, pulling out the little portable video game player he'd snuck into school and promptly forgotten about.
What is that?
Snarled Dracula, a look of alarm in his eye. Why, it's the latest thing for Earth, Dracula. Haven't you heard of it? A vampire zapper.
A vampire zapper?
Said Dracula.
Absurd.
Au contraire, Drac. This, you see, is my secret weapon. Prepare to be zapped. And Tim pressed the button. The machine made a terrible series of sounds, and Dracula nearly jumped out of his skin. In just a moment, he would see that the device was harmless, but the distraction was just enough to give Simon the time he needed. Thwack! Dracula gasped. He looked down. Where there had once been only his suit and a clean white shirt, there was now a wooden stake sticking out.
But,
he gasped.
But I threw the stake away,
said Dracula as he weaved dizzily back and forth. Had a fucking extra, you fucking moron, said Simon. The hero tossed oil onto the Count, and he lit a match. Jesus fucking Christ. Welcome in, Raiders. For anybody who doesn't know, my name is Professor Bloom. I am currently finishing up. Oh, let me try to shout you out, referee. Welcome on in, everybody. I'm messing up my commands. If you don't know, my name is Professor Bloom. I am a teacher. I do lots of singing. I organize a VTuber choir. And I play lots of retro games. And tonight, because I lost a fucking bet on Saturday, I am having to do an entire stream in a Boston accent. And I'm reading the Worlds of Power Castlevania 2 novelization. We are right at the end. It's really, really bad. Well, welcome on in, everybody. What were you doing, Reverie? All right, I'll get to it right after this. We only got 5 pages left in this piece of shit. Dracula gasped. He looked down. Where there had once been only a suit and a clean white shirt, there was now a wooden stake sticking out.
But,
he gasped.
But I threw the stake away,
said Dracula as he weaved dizzily back and forth. I had an extra, you fucking moron, said Simon. The hero tossed oil onto the Count, and he lit a fucking match. Well, said Tim Bradley, so much for Dracula. He certainly did pop off to his home dimension spectacularly, didn't he? Yes, said Linda Entwistle. She leaned into Simon Belmont's big chest, nuzzling. Also, they say he went to his home dimension. You fucking stabbed him through the heart with a wooden stake, poured oil on him, and lit him on fucking fire. He didn't go to his home dimension. He's fucking dead, kid. Modded Minecraft. That sounds fucking great compared to this. This is a piece of shit. I loved Simon's Quest, Castlevania 2, the video game. The novel is fucking terrible. Even as a kid, I would have hated this shit. And he didn't look very happy about it. But I'm certainly glad to be at home, especially now that I've got this. She held up a hand. On her ring finger and a set in the gold was the very diamond Simon had picked up along the way of the quest. It'll be nice to have a husband, especially a hero husband, but I suspect that husbands are much the same, hero or no hero. Simon looked a little puzzled, but happy. Tim could only laugh. I would not have, Gondola. I was not that dumb as a kid. They were sitting outside the inn now. It was a beautiful day. As soon as they cast Dracula back to the dimension of monsters, all the clouds and storm signs had blown away and the sun had come out, beautiful and golden. With the help of a little magic, the heroes and heroine had returned to their hometown, where there was great fanfare and celebration to meet them. I brought something for you, Tim, said Linda Entwistle. Something from the dimension where I was imprisoned they don't have here, but I know you like. She pulled out a large bar of rich brown milk chocolate. Tim could feel himself about to drool at the very sight of this piece of deliciousness. Boy, he wanted to just take it in his mouth and chew it up and let the wonderful gooey stuff slide down his throat and... Wait a minute. No, he didn't. Well, maybe he did. But now he realized he had something far more wonderful than just a love of chocolate. He had control. He had a choice. Thanks, Linda. That's very nice of you, but I think I'll pass for now. She smiled prettily at him. I understand. I'm not really trying to tempt you, Tim. No, I realize that. It's just nice to be able to say no. Oh yeah, and Tim gets over his fucking drug addiction to chocolate. Literally, Hanabi. Well, Linda, said Simon, I suppose it's about time for you to help Tim get back home. Home? The whole concept was different to Tim Bradley now. These 2.5 days in Castlevania had changed him so much that he didn't really think of home in the same way anymore. Hey, he said, what's the hurry? Just let me stay here for a while longer. I mean, I'm just getting to know you guys. I've not really gotten to know the real Castlevania either. The sunny, happy Castlevania. Linda shook her head sadly. I'm afraid, Tim, that already your presence here is creating a wrong vibration in both Castlevania and on Earth. We'd like you to stay, Tim, but for everyone's sake, it's best that you go. Simon looked very troubled. I shall miss you, Tim. You've been a good friend. Tim nodded. He'd miss the big guy, too. They shook hands. Oh, one little matter, said Tim. As long as you seem to be able to shift dimensional time and space, I don't suppose you'd be willing to ship me back to someplace other than the boys' room where you found me? There's this huge guy named Bert outside the door waiting for me to come out. Linda Entwistle looked at Tim with less respect than Tim had hoped for. Now, Tim, you've faced far scarier things than your junior high school rival here in Castlevania. Yeah, but back there, that's reality. This has been reality too, Tim, said Simon seriously. I know, but this is your reality. Back there, that's my reality. And don't you think that your reality back there has changed from your experiences here? He just fucking watched Dracula get murdered and he's afraid of his junior high school bully. Tim thought about that. I guess you're right. Still, I really don't want to face... We must all face our problems, even the small ones, said Linda. If we don't, then we become our own problem. Okay, but will I ever be able to come back? In many years, Timothy Bradley, said Simon Belmont, you will never leave. Or in many ways, Timothy Bradley, said Simon Belmont, you will never leave. They solemnly shook hands. Linda Entwistle took something out of a pocket. It was the crystal that had helped them so many times during their trip. Now it held a dazzling collection of rainbows inside. Linda whispered some words. A door appeared. Through it, Timothy Bradley could see his own world, or rather, the tile walls of the boys' room of his junior high school. You will return just 2 seconds after you left, said Simon. Tim took a deep breath and headed for the door. Tim, said Simon, you really won't need the whip. Rats, said Tim. He took his weapons and handed them back to Simon. I guess you're right, though. I'm going to have to face Bert with my bare fists. He was ready to go murder that kid. He was ready to go fucking destroy his bully with a fucking whip and a morning star. Simon shook his head. Tim, I realize we've experienced much violence here in Castlevania, but that was a sad necessity. From what I can tell, back in your homeworld, there's far too much violence. Perhaps you should try to deal with your rival in a different way. And you will be none the less a man for it, promised Linda. Tim sighed. You're right. Also, fucking prepare yourself. These next lines I was not ready for. Tim sighed. You're right. He gave Simon another handshake and he gave Linda a hug and then he turned to the door between the dimensions. Oh well, said Tim Bradley. At least he's not Dracula. They are all Draculas, said Simon Belmont. But they all can be bested, Tim. Remember that, and stay true to what you learned in Castlevania. Tim Bradley smiled, took a deep breath, and stepped back into his own world. Castlevania had been pretty rough, true, but there was nothing scarier or more challenging than junior high school. And that's the end of the fucking book. They are all Draculas. Dear Rita, I hoped you liked reading Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest. Here's a list of some other books that I thought you might like. As in, actual fucking good books. The Black Cauldron by Lloyd Alexander. Bunnicula by Deborah and James Howe. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. Eight Tales of Terror by Edgar Allan Poe. The Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King. And The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. You can find these books at your local library or bookstore. Ask your teacher or librarian for other books you might enjoy. Best wishes, FX9. And that's the whole fucking book, class. We have conquered Castlevania. We learned that everybody's got their own Dracula. They are all Draculas. We've learned a lot today. We've been on a big journey. We've been through Castlevania, and we came out the other side. And what have we learned? That I'm fucking shit at a Boston accent, kid. I'm fucking terrible at it. I can fake it for maybe a few sentences, and then it goes to shit immediately. Do not worry, Pinky. You have missed nothing. You have missed the worst book you will ever read. I kind of want to read another one of these on stream at some point because there are other Worlds of Power series books. Let me read you one bit from Mega Man. Just one bit from Mega Man. Because they made a Mega Man 2 book. Literally, not Mega Man 1. Mega Man 2. Airman. Airman was the scariest looking robot that Mega Man had ever seen. He was big and he was strong, but the scary thing about him was his mouth. Airman's mouth was a huge gaping hole that took in air and then blew it out in terrible gusts. Even though he was a robot, his body seemed like it was made out of clouds. As he moved, wisps of fog drifted off his pointed shoulders. Miniature tornadoes flew from his mouth, pointing their tails straight at Mega Man. Airman stood with his back against the wall, spitting out hundreds of tornadoes. "Destroying you will be a breeze, Mega Man," he shouted. I gotta point out, this book is 74 pages long. It's unbearable. It's all unbearable. Completely insane. Alright, but I can't keep up this I can't keep up this fucking accent much longer. Hold on, no. First you gotta see a little of the Ninja Gaiden. The Ninja Gaiden one's unbelievable. Even worse than Castlevania. Because listen to this shit. Hold on. Let me see here. Fucking. Let's get a chapter 2. Yeah, Ant-Man, God's House, and I in the strongest American Boston accent. I don't know that I can fucking do that, Kamiyana. I want to try, but I don't think I can fucking do it. Ryu, darling, I'm so happy for you. Mrs. Hayabusa's dark eyes glowed with warmth. She returned his son's enthusiastic hug and realized once again she had to stand on tiptoe. Her boy had grown so much. Fucking, we got Ryu's mom in the beginning in Ninja Gaiden. Her boy got his black belt. Ryu tore himself away. I don't believe it. No, I do believe it. I don't know what I believe. This is incredible. He let out a whoop of joy and leapt into the air. Mrs. Hayabusa laughed. I've never seen you like this, my son. I've never felt like this. For the first time since coming home, he set down the small box he'd been carrying. Opening it delicately, he pulled out the only item of clothing he ever cared about. His black belt. He tried it on and felt power surging through him. How does it look, Ma? Mrs. Hayabusa looked deeply into her son's eyes. Beautiful, Ryu. Just beautiful. Ryu nodded. His joy had overwhelmed him. He'd hardly been able to see straight. But his mother's eyes brought him back to earth. There was sadness, and Ryu knew why. I guess it's time, huh? He said. Ryu could tell his mother was trying not to look upset. She held her head high and smiled. My dearest son. It's fucking unbelievable. This was the part that sent me. Holding it in her trembling fingers, she turned to face her son. When your father left Tokyo for America, he was a young man, she began. He was so proud of his newborn baby boy, Ryu. He couldn't wait to come home from his expedition, and neither could I. I remember his parting words exactly. I give you this, my dear Asami, with a reluctant heart. I know I'll be seeing you within 2 weeks, but in the unlikely event I should not return, save this letter, this Gaiden, until little Ryu has become a man. I couldn't fucking believe it. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. These could make for very, very fun drinking streams. Some of the shorter ones, maybe. gotta get back into the fucking Boston accent. Give me... The real Ninja Gaiden was the fucking friends we made along the way. Oh my god. Well, thank you, everybody, for sticking around through what was undeniably one of the worst books I have ever read in my adult life, and certainly the worst one I have ever read on stream. Thank you very much for coming. Let me let you know what I got going on for the rest of the fucking week. I won't have to be in a Boston accent for the rest of the week, thank God. It was only for one... Whoops. Thank God. It was only for one stream. So let me see. On Wednesday night, I will be playing some Halloween-themed Doom WADs. One from the French Doom community called Tangerine Nightmare, which is really good. Should be a lot of fun. Then, Friday, at 6 p.m., I'll be playing, hopefully conquering, my childhood nemesis game, Festus Quest. It's a piece of shit game on the NES. I hate it, but I'm gonna fucking beat it. I'm going to sit down and fucking beat Festus Quest. Maybe a stream on Saturday. I don't know yet. Thank you, Kamiana, for calling it incredible. It did not feel that way to me. Give me 1 sec. Let me find somebody to raid. Know what? If you want somebody who's good at voice acting, not like me doing my terrible Boston accent, we could go raid Grimmy. Grimmy is an incredible... she can do amazing voices. Super cool streamer. Very horror themed. Very appropriate for this time of year. What should our raid message be? They are all Dracula's raid? They're all fucking Draculas. Let's go with they're all fucking Dracula's raid. Seems fucking right to me. They're all fucking Dracula's raid. Let's go with that. Let's go raid Grimmy. Let me see what she's up to. She's just talking. This is perfect. They're all fucking Draculas. If you're not following Grimmy, you should be. And I will see you next time, class. This was a lot of fun. The VOD will be up right after stream because I want to be able to give proof to Latanya that I did this because it was extremely painful for me. So thank you all. I'll let my normal voice slip out. They're all fucking Draculas. Let's fucking go, kid. Good night, everybody.
Kid, unready for society. You don't want to leave your kid unready for society, right? Nah. You want him to just be able to integrate into society perfectly. Perfectly. Hello, Professor Bloom.
Hello, how are you? I was talking about